Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hello, beautiful scroll friends of the world. Shout out to James for being first in the chat tonight, who also says, love this intro. I'm glad I had a lot of fun making. Also, shout out to Donna Salamander. Happy to see you as well again, my friend. Let us know so I can tell my bot if you would like a custom command, such as what you saw here with James. Also, for anyone who is new, feel free to join the Discord, and also feel free to become a member. We do have a lot of fun custom emoji and other perks for being a member. And of course, the Discord is awesome and free as always. I do think we will be seeing, we will be getting an appearance from Twiz tonight. He will be gracing us with his presence, hopefully for some Twiz reads. Flash can't be in the chat, but wanted to show support. We love you, Flash. Thanks for saying hi. Always here in spirit or in person, depending. So very interesting from last night's live stream, right, guys? We were going through this this article with the attorneys. Where we kind of left off prior to that, though, was we were in this dense sort of the data and the math and all that with this previous article we've been reading called Leveraging Death. So what I wanted to do is sort of round this out by finishing up going past all of the mathiness and the whatever those things are, statistical charts and symbols that I don't understand, and going to back where it's words and finishing this out. And then we'll go back to this one, which was where they surveyed all of these attorneys, and we're going to get to the really most interesting bit here. This should be, I think, the last installment, at least for now, in terms of our discussion with the plea bargaining as far as what I've got prepared. And so we will finish strong with seeing what all the attorneys ended up saying when they were surveyed and asked all these questions. For anyone who missed it, also last night we had a special treat with Kane joining us and reading. We had Kane reads, and he did a great job, period, but also especially having considering he had just hit his head in an effort to get ice cream. And so glad that he was okay. I'm glad he also came on to read because his reading showed to me that he did not, in fact, have any type of serious concussion. And having had a lot of concussions myself, I think I have enough experience to sort of spot that. So anyways, yeah, so here we go. We're going to start out here with the financial implications and discussion. And again, this is with this article called Leveraging Death. So dealing with plea deals, specifically in death penalty cases, right? All right. The U.S. Supreme Court has reasoned that plea bargaining is an essential component of the administration of justice when properly conducted. When properly conducted is important, right? Because previously to this, we had read that really awesome article on the coercive plea. So properly conducted would mean not, if it's coerced, that would not count. And here's Twiz. Hello, Twiz.
What's coerced?
You tell me. Wait, hold on. Hang on. We got a thing for this. Hold on. Wait. You said what's coerced?
You tell me, Plea.
There it is. There it is. Brilliant.
You tell me, Plea.
What are you up to there, Twiz?
Nothing.
Did you have a very twizzle day?
Pretty twizzlerific.
Love it. Any workout today? Sorry, twerkout?
Not yet. Not yet.
Night's still young, though.
After this,
Word.
I'm planning on it.
You gonna do arms still? Arms only?
Yeah, that's like the beginning of the week routine. I just haven't been finishing the weeks out.
Right. That makes sense. Got it. So we were just reading, and I'm going to make this big. That's what she said, so it's easier to see for everybody. We were just reading. We actually just gotten started here on, when properly conducted. We were one sentence in, right? Properly conducted. So no coercion. We don't like coercion, right? So I'll read a little bit and then you can take over if you want, Twiz. Do you have anything else you'd like to say to the scroll crew?
Welcome to the show.
Well said. Love it. Excellent. And yeah, all right. So, and as they say in Russian, Dobro pожаловать. Welcome. You want to say welcome in any other languages, Twiz?
Hola.
How do you say welcome in Spanish? I don't even remember.
El welcomeo.
I thought you did well in Spanish. Oh no, you did sign language.
Yeah, I don't know Spanish.
We can't tell your sign language with for this. Welcome in Spanish. I don't remember. Oh, duh. Bienvenida. Right, of course. Duh. Should have known. Should have remembered. Willkommen. That is what is that? Dutch? Willkommen, I believe. So, anywho, okay. Plea bargaining. Plea bargaining is purported to provide benefits in the form of reduced costs, increased efficiency, and certainty to defendants, prosecutors, defense counsel, judges, and victims. When plea bargaining in the shadow of death, incentives for parties to plea bargain may be significantly magnified, although some have suggested that disincentives to plea bargaining may be overriding. Not only has the court approved the use of the death penalty by prosecutors to secure guilty pleas, but prosecutors have openly stated that they, or other prosecutors with whom they are familiar, routinely use the death penalty as leverage in plea negotiations. Ugh, just makes me want to throw up. Due to the absence of methodologically rigorous research on the subject, however, the actual impact of the threat of capital punishment on plea bargaining dynamics has been largely speculative. This article has demonstrated that, at least in Georgia, speaking of Georgia, shout out to Mary, who's in the chat as well, the death penalty does reduce the total number of cases proceeding to trial, right, because they plead out. Based on the magnitude of that effect, however, it does not appear that the threat of the death penalty deters enough murder trials to be cost effective. This is especially relevant because the high price tag associated with pursuing the death penalty, coupled with the infrequency of death sentences and executions, has caused many state and local officials to rethink seriously the feasibility of maintaining the death penalty. These concerns have only been exacerbated in recent years due to the current financial crisis. Want to read some, Twiz? Twiz reads. Twiz reads. Twiz reads. Twiz reads. Are you with us, Twiz? Twiz! Hopefully Twiz is okay. Well, I'll keep reading until we hear from Twiz. Okay. In 2009, at least 11 state legislatures considered bills to abolish the death penalty, citing associated costs as one of their primary concerns. Abolition bills were reintroduced as in at least 5 of those states in 2011. Georgia lawmakers introduced their own abolition bill in early 2012, also citing the financial burden of administering the death penalty. Over the past 5 years, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Illinois, and Connecticut have abolished the death penalty. And the high cost of maintaining a properly functioning death penalty system figured prominently in all of those debates. A recent national study suggests each additional capital trial causes an increase in county spending of more than $2 million, and these costs are borne primarily by increasing taxes. Such costs have forced many counties to seek help from state legislatures to create programs to diffuse death penalty costs across counties, even those that do not choose to use the death penalty. So in other words, even for counties that don't choose to use the death penalty, they still have to be taxed higher to make up for the ones that do. Total taxes and expenditures for capital trials from 1983 to 1999 were more than $5.5 billion. It's a lot of money to kill people. Some of the most thorough examinations of costs associated with the death penalty over the past 20 years have expressly noted that the threat of the death penalty may actually produce financial savings by increasing capitally charged defendants' propensity to accept a plea, thereby avoiding trial costs. Unfortunately, none of these studies were able to offer any definitive answers to this question because, based on available evidence, the impact of capital punishment on plea bargaining was too speculative. Ooh, there's North Carolina. Studies in California, Indiana, Kansas, and North Carolina. And see? All acknowledge that a truly comprehensive study of the cost of the death penalty in their respective jurisdictions would require a close examination of the causal impact of the death penalty on plea bargaining in death-eligible cases. Capital trials are extremely expensive, so numerous plea bargains in potentially capital trials may be required to offset the cost of a single capital trial. So let me read that part again. That's important. Capital trials are extremely expensive, so numerous plea bargains in potentially capital trials may be required to offset the cost of a single capital trial. So what that says there is, again, yet another reason why it would be advantageous to charge and give a death notice, right, for the death penalty, and then in hopes of striking a plea deal for LWOP, because you need several plea bargains to offset just one trial if they take it to trial. Capital cases are more expensive and time-consuming than comparable non-capital murder cases at every stage of the process. More time for pretrial preparation, more pretrial motions, more experts, more attorneys for the defense, and typically the government as well, more time to conduct voir dire, longer trials, we all know. Georgia has yet to conduct a comprehensive study of the costs of its capital punishment system, but trial costs for the median capital case have been estimated as at least 4 times more expensive than the median non-capital murder trial. So 4 times more expensive, guys. The elapsed time from arrest to murder conviction in capital cases in Georgia for the period under investigation in this study was nearly 1.8 times longer than the elapsed time from arrest to murder conviction in death-eligible non-capital cases. Okay, this is just going on. More motions filed. It's more expensive again. I mean, we are already well aware of the cost. We've heard a lot about this in all the different cases that we cover. So let's see what the next. Oh, there's North Carolina. Similar estimates have been discovered at the state level. For example, in North Carolina, the median cost of a capital case ultimately disposed by plea bargain was 1.6 times more expensive than the median cost of a death-eligible non-capital case disposed by trial. So what that means is if it was death-eligible, but they didn't seek the death penalty. Okay. There's North Carolina again. And see? Okay. We're almost to the end of this one here, I do believe. Based on these stark differences in costs between capital and non-capital cases, it is quite possible that prosecutors are fully aware that the threat of capital punishment cannot serve any cost-saving function, and they merely leverage the death penalty to impose harsher bargaining terms, most notably life imprisonment. More than 70% of inmates serving life sentences were convicted of murder, and more than 1 in 4 of all inmates serving a life sentence have no possibility of parole. But this use of the death penalty has important cost implications as well. Now they're going to talk about the mandatory minimum, Okay, let's get to this conclusion. When the Supreme Court ruled in Furman that the death penalty was unconstitutional as applied, the majority was particularly concerned that the death penalty was not being reserved exclusively for the worst crimes and the worst criminals, the quote-unquote worst of the worst, right? Many commentators have remarked that the death penalty is an incredibly powerful tool at the disposal of prosecutors, especially when it is used as leverage to induce defendants to forfeit their right to trial and accompanying rights. The empirical findings in this article suggest that the threat of the death penalty has a substantial causal effect on the likelihood that a defendant accepts a plea agreement. Nevertheless, the magnitude of the effect is clearly insufficient to offset the substantial administrative and financial costs arising from the occasional capital defendant taking her chances at trial. Or, in some instances, even the capital case that incurs significant pretrial or pre-penalty phase costs prior to a plea agreement. The government's use of the death penalty to obtain convictions quickly and cheaply appears to fail on both of these dimensions. And this may be particularly true in marginal cases because the likelihood of a trial, a sentence other than death, or a reversal on appeal is particularly high. Prosecutors are likely to continue to use the threat of the death penalty in this highly inefficient manner unless they are required to internalize more of the costs of making poor screening decisions on the front end. Given the tremendous human and financial costs associated with the use of the, quote, ultimate punishment, end quote, prosecutors must be made to think carefully about using the death penalty as a bargaining chip in situations where such a severe sanction may be unwarranted. And here's the appendix. So, yeah, there we go. And welcome to whoever else has joined us. Kimmy, I believe, is here. Hello, Kimmy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so now we're going to carry on with where we were last night towards the second half of the live stream with this article. Now, what I want to do before we pick up where we left off is I want to recap some of the highlights of from the beginning of this to where we were, because there's so many really important points. So we're going to go through a couple highlights. I kind of went ahead and picked them out ahead of time, and then we'll pick up where we get to the results, where they asked the attorneys the specific questions and then they answered in their own words. So first of all, this will also get anyone up to speed who maybe didn't catch some of these other, parts 1 through 4 per se. All right. In the current American criminal justice system, the majority of convictions occur as a result of guilty pleas rather than trial. In 2015, 97.1% of federal cases that were resolved via a guilty plea. So that was one thing I wanted to make sure everyone was well aware of. And then the next part was, in either case, the decision to plead guilty appears to have become a tactical decision rather than a moral decision to admit guilt. In this context, the role of the defense attorney is complicated. It will often involve trying to help a client navigate many competing considerations, assessments of risk, and assessments of factual guilt or innocence. And this is really important, guys. I was actually talking about this with Scott today, one of the attorneys there. It is not clear whether attorneys should be and are advising clients on the decision that they should make based on an assessment of their best interests, or whether the proper role of the attorney is just to provide the relevant information to a client and leave them to make the best decision for themselves. The added consideration of factual guilt or innocence makes this process even more complex. And in this paper, we interviewed criminal defense attorneys about their perspectives on and experiences with the plea system. And then the next part I wanted to go through real quick. Let's see here. Yes. Let's see, different roles, different mechanisms of pressure. There's now extensive evidence to suggest that innocent defendants as well as guilty defendants plead guilty. And then this was really interesting, guys, for anyone who missed it. All right. This phenomenon has been confirmed through real wrongful convictions. Check this out. In 2017, about 18% of exonerations listed in the National Registry of Exonerations were categorized as involving a guilty plea. Let me say that again. In 2017, of those who were exonerated, 18% of those who were exonerated had pled guilty. One more time for those of you guys who missed it. In 2017, 18% of exonerations that are listed in the National Registry of Exonerations, 18% of them had pled guilty. The true number of wrongful convictions from guilty pleas is likely even higher than this, since exoneration is particularly hard for defendants who have pled guilty. And then another part I wanted to read one real quick here. Let's see here. The role of the attorneys. This is what's so fascinating, guys. So, and the attorneys differ, right? So many questions about attorney advice in this area, particularly the way attorneys consider suspected guilt or innocence when giving advice, remain unanswered. It is unclear whether attorneys should ever be advising an innocent defendant to plead guilty. Ethical rules typically call on attorneys to refuse to offer evidence that they know to be false. And that's what really got me thinking about this, right? And I was talking to Scott about this, because if they know a defendant is innocent, but they advise them to plead guilty, does that violate their ethical rules? And again, when it comes to these plea deals, this seems to be the one exception, at least as it stands today, where it seems like that is still considered to be okay, but under any other circumstance, it wouldn't be, right? It'd be like eliciting false testimony. So I'm going to read it again. It is unclear whether attorneys should ever be advising an innocent defendant to plead guilty. Ethical rules typically call on attorneys to refuse to offer evidence that they know to be false and to take reasonable remedial measures where false testimony is offered. That's from the ABA and all the other professional guidelines that that attorneys are bound by. However, this is clearly not thought, keep reading, to apply in the case of innocent defendants when pleading guilty, right? It's like the exception. And then this part is disgusting. Research suggests that some defense attorneys may be going too far in this regard, having a bias towards plea bargaining in legal cases. And they call it the meet and plead, in which defendants meet their attorney for the first time. A plea is offered, accepted, and entered. Just, I can't. Then we talked about this last night, the ineffective assistance of counsel. Katie McBanawa is a great example of that from the Adelson case. But here we go. All right, here's the big question, though. All right, is the only responsibility to convey a plea offer and to provide accurate information, and this is referencing the responsibility of the attorney. So let me say that again. Is the only responsibility of the attorney to convey a plea offer and to provide accurate information? Does the responsibility extend to providing sound advice based on the best interests of a client? And should clients' claims of guilt or innocence influence attorney advice? These are all great questions, right, guys? Okay, so then we got into the method. So we covered all of this last night for anyone who missed it. So they surveyed a bunch of these defense attorneys in a number of states. And just for the record, I'm just going to repeat which states they surveyed defense attorneys from. New York, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Wyoming, Vermont, Idaho, Iowa, Arizona, and Rhode Island. Okay, so now we're going to jump to where we had left off, which is here with the results, right here. Actually, we read this part. We read this paragraph. So they had 166 participants. Okay, so here we are. Interview questions. This is where we were. Interview questions. When asked whether they'd ever been involved in a case where a client had chose to plead guilty despite maintaining their innocence, 148 of the 166, right, said yes, 14 said no, and 4 said they preferred not to answer. 74 of the participants said they had advised a client who they believed was innocent to plead guilty. Let me say that again. So that's 44.58%. So almost half. 74, or almost half, of the participants said they had advised a client who they believed was innocent to plead guilty. Noteworthy here is not in situations where the client said they were innocent, but where the attorney believed they were innocent. Almost half in this that were asked in the study had advised those clients the attorney believed was innocent to plead guilty. And then about actually still a little bit less than half said they had not. And then 8.4% preferred not to answer. 30 attorneys provided an estimate of the proportion of defendants who pled guilty that they believed to be innocent or guilty of a lesser offense than the one they pled guilty to. And Twiz, do you want to pop on in here and do some Twiz reads? Oh, look, we have a chart.
Nope.
What have we got? Estimate of the proportion of people. You want to explain this chart since you're so smart? Oh, that rhymes. What have we got?
I don't know. This is the first time I've seen it. Estimate of the proportion of people who plead guilty who are either innocent or guilty only of a lesser offense. Proportion of attorneys giving estimates in this range.
So in other words, I think it's like of the ones that answered the questions. Let's see. Or I guess it's estimates, like nationwide estimates versus what these specific attorneys answered to. Let's see. Maybe they
are. This is a very poorly.
Yeah, it's not the best chart
because it should be like it should tell you which line is which.
Oh, well, here's a little descriptor. Attorney estimates of the proportion of people who plead guilty who are actually innocent or guilty of a lesser offense. And they plead guilty to. Error bars represent 95% confidence intervals. Okay. All right. Are there cases in the current system in which innocent defendants should plead guilty? Take it away. Twiz Pants.
We asked attorneys whether they believed there were cases in which innocent defendants should plead guilty. 152 attorneys gave a yes or no response to this question. Of those attorneys, 119 or 78.29%, 95 CI 7108. What?
Yeah, I think that with all this, right? I think that the important thing is to sort of just go with the number because we know there's 166 that participated, right? So yeah. I think we can skip all this. That's for the math people out there. y'all can
It
have fun with
probably
that.
corresponds with the chart somewhere.
Probably.
If their
We're
chart
maybe
was
not the best
explained
people
better.
to explain that.
119 said there were cases in which innocent defendants should plead guilty given the current system, making the current system the problem.
Yeah.
33 said that innocent defendants should not ever plead guilty. Mean comparisons using t-tests showed that the attorneys that said there were cases in which innocent defendants should plead guilty and those that said did not differ in mean years of experience or political orientation.
Okay, so here they're taking into account, do the years of experience have a factor on some of these answers? That's a great consideration. So here, the years of experience and the political orientation did not impact their answer. But it'll be interesting to see if going forward, years of experience will make a difference in how they answer these questions, right? Interesting.
A chi-squared analysis showed that the proportion of attorneys responding that there were cases in which innocent defendants should plead guilty did not significantly differ based on attorney gender.
Good, I would hope not.
Hold on, I gotta fix my... I forgot to adjust these things when I got on here. Attorneys who said that innocent defendants should plead guilty were asked to elaborate on the circumstances in which they thought this was the case. We reviewed responses to identify general and overlapping themes that responses would fit into. We identified 4 broad themes. When possible outcomes at trial were very severe, where a cost-benefit analysis favored taking the plea, e.g. because of strong evidence against the defendant and a good plea offer, where pleading guilty would benefit the client through faster and easier resolution of the case, e.g. getting them out of jail or avoiding the difficulty and pressure of trial. I thought this was about innocent people pleading guilty, though. That's crazy. And avoiding significant repercussions through a plea. Hold
on. It said this is about innocent defendants. What they're saying is there's 4 circumstances that they were able to identify where attorneys said that innocent defendants should plead guilty in these 4 different categories, right? That's what they're identifying. So when the outcomes at trial were very severe, when a cost-benefit analysis, which is so funny, this is what we've talked about a ton, right, over these live streams.
My point is, if you are innocent, how is there strong evidence against you?
It happens all the time.
Is the evidence actually strong, though? If you are innocent. That's
Runkle gives a good example of this, and this is sort of along these lines, but it's just a good illustration that he gave on a live stream one time, and I love this example. So the story he gave is when people were asking, I think it probably was during Karen Reed or whatever, and people were like, how can you have evidence against you if you're actually innocent or whatever? And I think it also pertained to like talking. And here's the example he gave. He said, let's say that you were minding your own business, doing whatever, la-di-da-di-da, right? And then you get arrested and charged with murder, and you have no idea like what's going on, right? And you're in the cop car and you don't say anything at all, except for you just are like, I like tomatoes. And unbeknownst to you, they have found tomato sauce all over the crime scene, right? And it's like, all right, that's it. We got him. And he tells it better than that, but that's the gist of it, right? Where it's like, you could say anything however benign, but you don't know what they have, and you don't know what you say, and what could basically, again, and thank you, Random Girl, and also happy to see you again. Circumstantial evidence can look strong. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Circumstantial evidence can look strong. You could also have a botched investigation, right? Or things that are planted. But I think that the most likely and common would be this scenario where circumstantial evidence can look strong depending on how it's presented. This happens all the time. And again, I can give so many examples too, just from my new job, of the things that I see that would shock you guys, that are insane. And in fact, at one point, I'll tell you all a story from today that you guys will love that really deals with this very issue as well, that will shock y'all. And it's a case that is going to be going to trial. Another one. So
which YouTube channel can we watch it on?
I don't know, but I'll tell you this much. This particular case is just as good as anything that we follow. It's got it all. Y'all, we'll talk about it at a good stopping point, but I'll just say, like, in my mind, like with the facts of this case, I was like, oh my God, this would rival any of these cases that get, national media attention and lots of interest. But anyway, but we'll talk about that. Apparently, they don't seem to televise North Carolina trials very often. It's not like cameras are not allowed, but they just don't really do it that often. But I don't know. It's a shame. It'd be awesome if it was streamed so you guys could watch it.
Well, you can bring a camera in there.
No, that wouldn't be allowed. Besides, I'll be at council table working hard. Okay, so you want to keep reading, Twiz, and then we can switch off. Finish out this.
Where were we at? 2 authors then independently classified each response into one or more of the themes. There was unanimous agreement on the classifications, indicating high reliability. Table 1 shows a summary of the number of attorneys who identified each theme and some sample responses for each theme. Note that some attorneys identified more than one theme in their response.
Okay, so what they're saying here is some attorneys said of the 4 categories that were listed here that they identified, or I guess themes, that some identified more than one. Okay, so here we go. Table 1. All right, so theme, the first theme, severe outcome at trial. Number of attorneys, 49. And then so this is what I love. They actually got to put in their own words, right? Sample responses. Many innocent people take deals when facing draconian mandatory penalties. So like, for example, a fixed sentence, right? Here's another response. Faced with decades of prison and offered a year or two, rational people don't even gamble. Even if the risks of losing are extremely small, the consequences of losing can change a client's life, or the consequences of a plea will not. If the risks of a conviction are great, even if the likelihood is low, it may make sense. The state has such incredible leverage and power in many cases, it can be in someone's best interest to accept a plea to eliminate their risk of catastrophic consequences. Now we get to the cost-benefit analysis here, so this is really the chance of conviction and sentences involved. So where it is unlikely they will be successful at trial and the plea deal is for a substantially less crime or a minor sentence. When the evidence is overwhelming and the stakes are very high, like mandatory minimum sentences to be avoided, this person said, yes, it is a pure cost-benefit analysis, especially where there are immigration or job-related consequences that can be avoided by a plea. When the likelihood of conviction and a substantially worse outcome outweighs the likelihood of acquittal or a substantially better outcome. And then we have faster and easier resolution. So there were 17 attorneys that gave this one. So as you can see, in terms of the different attorneys that weighed in on this, right? You had 49 who stated their basis as being the severe outcome at trial. 76 went with the cost-benefit analysis. That's what we've been saying. Only 17 gave their primary reason for a fast and easier resolution. That makes sense that would be the least important maybe of the bunch. This person says, I've been involved in cases where it would have taken my clients longer than the sentence stimulated? I think that's supposed to say stipulated in the plea offer to go through trial and litigate the case. Clients in pretrial custody with a pre-existing criminal record can benefit from pleading guilty to a petty charge for the sole reason that they can get out of custody and resume their lives. Unfortunately, clients may have to plead guilty to save money due to incarceration while waiting for trial. When a person has been held in jail for several weeks without the means to bond out and the offense is relatively minor, clients often lose their motivation to fight. And I think I do think that this is a great point because it does make a big difference, right? If you're dealing with like minor charges, I think the whole landscape of everything is completely different than when you're dealing with, more serious offenses, especially those that involve something like a life sentence or the death penalty. And then we have 15 attorneys that gave a plea offer that avoids any significant, that looks like that got cut off, but it says, yes, an innocent client might plead guilty if the consequences would not hamper future activity, such as job qualifications or movement. A plea that offers significant repercussions and eliminates the risk of these things is usually worth it. In obvious cases where the conviction will be of no practical consequence. And then again, we have several attorneys gave examples of cases in which they had likely innocent clients who chose to plead guilty. For example, a case where a likely innocent client was charged with a felony where a loss of life was involved, but could plead guilty to a misdemeanor and be released from jail. And then another one, a case in which a likely innocent client was charged with sexual assaults and threatened with a 40-year felony sentence, could plead guilty to disorderly conduct and be sentenced to pay only court costs. I mean, that makes sense, right? You know? And a case in which a likely innocent client was accused of murder and could plead guilty to being an accessory after the fact and be sentenced to time served and probation. Again, that sounds good, doesn't it, though? You get time served. You plead to accessory after the fact, time served.
But see, then that wouldn't be an innocent person.
Why do you say that?
If they were an accessory after the fact.
It's just whatever the evidence against them they think could show at trial. Right?
I mean, I guess.
It's the same with any other charge, whether it's accessory after the fact or manslaughter or burglary or whatever the charge is. It's only about what the evidence will show in the case of going to trial. Random Girl also says law nerding. Thank you for the congrats. I adore my new job. It is amazing. And I feel like I'm learning so much every single day that just makes this even better for you guys and for me, like as we just continue our knowledge, because as I always say, learning is scrolling. Many attorneys also noted that the ultimate decision as to whether to plead guilty, when innocent or otherwise, was with the client. Another recurring theme was mandatory sentences, right? So like fixed sentences. Mandatory sentences were mentioned by 15 attorneys as a reason that innocent defendants pled guilty due to harsh outcomes mandated upon conviction at trial and discrepancies between those outcomes and plea offers. All right, Twiz, you want to take over? Role of attorneys?
The role of attorneys. Chelsea's turn. Yay!
What?
Examination of responses showed that the number of attorneys who said that they had encouraged a client who wished to go to trial to take a plea was significantly higher than the number of attorneys who said that they had encouraged a client who wanted to take a plea deal to go to trial.
Let's break that down. What do you think about that, Twiz? First of all, I think the important thing to know is this is in situations where the attorneys encouraged the client, right? Because remember, one of the questions is, should they just present the information, let the client completely decide, right? Or should they really advise them, like, here's what we think you should do? Here, where it says encouraged, this sounds like this is where in situations where the attorneys felt like they should have a more active role in the decision, right? So that's the first thing. So check it out, though, right? What do you think?
I don't know. I need more examples. It's interesting.
Like, in other words, if attorneys are going to have that more active role, more often than not, what it sounds like is what they're doing is encouraging them to take a plea deal when the client wanted to go to trial. Versus,
I kind of think it sounds like the attorney wanted it over faster so they could make more money somewhere.
Well, that would be malpractice, but I understand what you're saying. I mean, having said
how would that be malpractice?
Okay, because you're only supposed to do if you're an attorney, right? And if you're, I guess, okay, so if you're a prosecutor, you're representing the government. So we're talking about defense attorneys, or if it's in civil, right, plaintiff or defense. In that case, then you're supposed to only do things that are in the best interest of your client. That number one, that is your job, right? But also, what I will say is this: oftentimes, defense attorneys they charge a flat rate, regardless of anything, right? In fact, a lot of the time, the majority of the time, I will say, both Scott and Chris charge a flat rate. So whether or not, so that takes the whole thing about the cost out of it. Like whether the defendant wants to go to trial or wants to plead, whatever, it doesn't change the cost for what they have to pay. So that, I think, is a good model. But also, if you're charging like by the hour, say, you're probably going to actually make more money if you go to trial, right? As we know, that's one of the reasons why people plead, as in the defendants, because it costs them too much to go to trial. And that would be the case if they're paying hourly, right? It's so expensive to go to trial. In other words, if you want to make a lot of money as a criminal defense attorney, and not that you should, it would be unethical, but if you're trying to just like scam people out of money, you would be encouraging going to trial versus a plea deal. So Does that make sense?
Yeah. But if it's like a flat fee thing, it would cost you more to go to trial. But if you could get them to take a plea, the case is over and you could work on other cases.
Well, having said that, though, attorneys are working on more than one case at a time. Maybe not in like specifically super high profile trials, like maybe with like, we know with Karen Reed, they had to put other things aside, but like, at least the attorneys that I work for, they've got lots of clients. So they don't ever make a decision based on how many clients they have. That shouldn't affect another client, if that makes sense, right?
It shouldn't, but
yeah,
that doesn't mean that it doesn't.
But I think that for the purposes of this analysis, I think, and I don't know, maybe something about the money will come up. I doubt it. This is really more about, though, examining the nature of the plea deal in terms of if the client, if the attorneys think the client was innocent or guilty, right? And what was in their best interest. So it sort of might muddy the waters to try to bring in other factors that aren't analyzed, right? Because if they're not asking any questions about money and how much they're charging, how much they're making, which so far they're not, I don't think they will, then we can't really assess that fairly because we don't have the answers of the people surveyed, right? So let's go off of what we have from the survey. And if that makes sense, right? It'd be sort of like adding an unknown variable, right? But they are, the study here, we've got enough variables and that's what they're assessing. But I find it interesting that the number is much lower of attorneys who encouraged a client to take a plea deal when the client wanted to go to trial. Again, I think it's just sort of like, well, let's see what else they say. I wonder if this is where the experience level is going to come in. And if like the more experienced attorneys are the ones that are more in that first category, because they're like, trust me, I've been here. The best thing to do is to plead, right? Again, but should the other question, again, should they be having that much of an active role in the first place? It's a lot to think about.
153 attorneys answered our question about whether they had ever encouraged a client who wished to take a plea deal to go to trial. Of these attorneys, 97 said that they had encouraged a client who wished to take a plea deal to go to trial, and 56 said that they had not. Mean comparison showed that attorneys who said they had encouraged a client who wished to take a plea deal to go to trial had significantly greater average experience.
Okay, there it is. Interesting.
Than those who said they had not.
Wow. Those are the ones where the client wanted to plead and they're like, no, trust me, let's go to trial. Interesting. Okay. That's the opposite of what I was speculating on.
I wonder if attorneys are that scared of juries, because that's kind of crazy.
But this is saying the more experienced attorneys are encouraging them to go to trial when the client was too scared. Interesting. Like I was expecting it to say like the more experienced attorneys would have been the ones convincing them to plead when they wanted to go to trial, but this is saying the opposite. Attorneys who had encouraged them to take the client wanted to plead and the attorneys encouraged them to go to trial had more experience. That is I mean, that makes me happy in a way, because I feel like if the client is scared to go to trial, but you're like, trust me, you've got this, that to me is not as icky, if it's icky at all, as like the client's like, I want to go to trial, and the attorney's like, nah, just take the plea deal. Because again, we know that the way the whole system works with the coercive plea, right? It's like that to me has much more of a tendency to feel icky. Does that, what do you think about that, Twiz? You have any thoughts? Is one more icky to you than the other?
Not really.
Do you think that the attorneys shouldn't take an active role at all and just do the thing where, like the first category, where they just present the information and then don't give their opinion and let the attorney or the client decide?
I don't see how they could really do that.
Because if that's the case, then they have to say, what they think is best for the client. And if it's different than what the client was expressing, right?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one. Y'all in the chat and on replay crew, if you're in the comments, let us know what you guys think. And these are all really good questions. And again, it's just things to think about. Okay, carrying on.
The groups did not significantly differ in political orientation. A chi-square analysis indicated that the proportion of male attorneys who had encouraged a client who wished to take a plea deal to go to trial was greater than the proportion of female attorneys. Hells yeah.
Interesting. Okay. They're pretty close, but yeah, it is more male. Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll swap in, swap out, swap in. Okay. When asked whether they had ever encouraged a client who wanted to go to trial to accept a plea deal, 154 of our attorneys gave a yes or no answer. Of these attorneys, 138 said they had encouraged a client who wanted to go to trial to accept a plea deal. So that's a lot. And 16 said they had not. Analysis indicated these groups did not differ significantly in years of experience. Interesting, because in the other one, it did. So that's fascinating. So let me break that down. So in terms of attorneys who encouraged a client to go to trial when the client initially wanted to take a plea deal, the majority of attorneys in that category had significantly greater experience. But in this category of attorneys who encouraged a client to take a plea when the client initially wanted to go to trial, the difference in the ages or the years of experience did not differ significantly. That is fascinating. There was also no significant difference in the responses of male and female. These results suggest that attorneys are advising clients who want to go to trial to plead guilty more often than they are advising clients who want to plead guilty to go to trial. That's exactly what I figured would be the case. We also examined attorneys who said they had advised a client who they thought was innocent to plead guilty, and attorneys who said they had never advised a client who they thought was innocent to plead guilty separately. Interesting. To compare the proportion of each group who had encouraged a client who wanted to go to trial to plead guilty. So they separated them out. They put the attorneys in two groups. So group one, you've got attorneys who had a client that they thought was innocent, but they encouraged them to plead guilty. And then group two, you've got attorneys who, if they thought the client was innocent, they never encouraged them to plead guilty, and they assessed them separately. All right. The difference between the two groups was significant. A greater proportion of attorneys who had advised a client who they thought was innocent to plead guilty, and by a greater proportion, we're talking 94.1%, had encouraged a client who wanted to go to trial to plead guilty than attorneys who had never advised a client who they thought was innocent to plead guilty. So let's break this one down. Greater proportion of plead guilty. Encourage a client who want to go to trial. Okay, so what they're separating it out is like if a client wants to go to trial, right? But they're advised to plead guilty, that's like one thing. But then it's like, okay, what about if they're innocent and factoring that in, right? So in other words, you have, wow, that's wild. So here's what this is saying. Okay, here's what they're saying. More often with this group of attorneys, more often than saying, okay, well, the client wants to go to trial, but we think you should plead guilty. The more often scenario is actually if they thought the client was innocent, but to have them plead guilty. In other words, it's regardless of what the client wants to do, right? In this case, it's like they thought the client was innocent, but they still thought they should plead guilty is what that looks like. We examined the reasons that attorneys gave for encouraging or not encouraging a client who wanted to accept a plea deal to go to trial, and the reasons that attorneys gave for encouraging or not encouraging a client who wanted to go to trial to accept a plea deal. Oh my God, I can't wait to get to these responses. Here we go. Different broad categories. Here's the categories coming right up here. Okay. Reasons given by attorneys for encouraging a client to go to trial rather than plead guilty, and for not encouraging a client to go to trial rather than plead guilty. Okay. So proportion of attorneys in each category for this reason. So the reason for encouraging the client to go to trial. So remember, this would be reason for encouraging them even when the client initially wanted to plead, okay? So client doesn't appreciate the long-term consequences of a plea. The client is irrational as they are scared of the jury. The client underestimates their chance of success, and there's a good chance of success at trial. So like, this is what I was saying just a second ago, where it's like, yeah, you got this, right? You got this. Let's take it at trial. Trust my experience, right? The plea offer is bad, and or the client has little to lose by going to trial, and then believe that the client is innocent. So where that one is, proportion of those different responses, the one with the highest proportion actually is this one, that the client underestimated their chance of success. The plea offer being bad was in second place, and the belief that the client was innocent was in third place. So what this is saying is that the belief that the client is innocent is not the most important factor for these attorneys when deciding how to advise the client, which is interesting, right? Like, let's just make sure everyone understands that. Like, when these attorneys are giving their reasons for encouraging the client to go to trial, when the client initially wanted to plead, whether or not they believe the client is innocent is only third on the list.
That is kind of crazy.
Right? It's really, in other words, what we're seeing here is it really has very little bearing in the realm, in the grand scheme of things, right? In terms of how they advise the client. Welcome, Amelia, Doug's wife, been lurking. Love that you're here. The life versus death sentence odds, I would say check out parts 3 and 4, I suppose, of this series, where we went through the specific article that dealt the article that dealt specifically with the death penalty, the one called Leveraging Death. That was literally all about the plea deal and the death penalty. So they haven't gotten into that yet as far as this particular one where they're actually talking to the attorneys and asking them. So we'll see if they do. Maybe they will. Okay, now we have reasons for not encouraging a client to go to trial. Okay, let's go in order of first place. So first place for not encouraging them to go to trial, it is the client's choice what to do. Fascinating. Notice that is missing from this category. Wow. This is shocking. Where they're saying it's the client's choice what to do only came up when it was basically the client wants to plead. In other words, what we're seeing here is when it comes to when going to trial, really, it seems like the attorneys really had a big role in encouraging them to do that. Wow, fascinating. And then in second place here, we have, for reasons not encouraging a client to go to trial, we have the unpredictability of a jury trial, don't want to impose the risk on the client, or it is unethical to, wow. It is unethical to do so. Reasons for not, so in other words, it would be unethical to encourage them to go to trial. Fascinating. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see what's coming up, because it's like, okay, so now these attorneys, remember, these are not categories that they're given. These are categories that they determine based on these open-ended responses from the attorneys. So the attorneys are bringing ethics into the mix. It's going to be really interesting to see how they choose to do that when it comes to the innocence factor, because so far that has been low on the consideration list here. Wow. Mary says, got to put the fish to bed. Give them a little hug and a kiss for me, please. We love the fishies. And then table 3, reasons given by attorneys for encouraging a client to plead guilty rather than to go to trial, and for not encouraging a client to plead guilty rather than go to trial. So here we have, again, same sort of thing. Reason for encouraging them to plead guilty. All right. Wow. Reason for encouraging them to plead guilty. Let's find first place. First place is potential consequences of trial, risk at trial too great. Second place is chances of success of trial are very small. Chances of success at trial are very small. Third place is the cost of the trial, cost to the defendant. Fourth place
is super low percentage.
Yeah. The client has an unrealistic view of the facts and of the trial. And the last place here is the unpredictability of trial and minimizing uncertainty. All right, you want to take over, Twiz?
Reasons for not encouraging a client to plead guilty. It is the client's choice what to do. It is unethical to do so.
Interesting. So the question is going to become, what makes it unethical, right? Is it because you actually believe they're innocent, or is it because of the facts of the case and the evidence? I mean, I'm sure they're going to get into it. But again, I love that the attorneys are bringing the ethics into it. All right, you can keep going if you want, Twiz.
Experimental task assessing attorney advice. Finally, we analyzed the results of our experimental task in which we gave attorneys case facts from 2 cases. Case 1 involving a schoolgirl accused of marijuana possession, and Case 2 involving an adult accused of sexual assault. 189 attorneys answered these questions. Overall, attorneys advised their defendant to plead guilty more in Case 1.
So case 1 being the high school or schoolgirl accused of marijuana possession.
Attorneys also thought that the defendant in Case 1 was more likely to be guilty.
Interesting. Why is that?
The facts of the case were there, you know.
Interesting. Now remember, they gave there's at the bottom of this, we get the narrative. Remember how they had talked earlier about this, how in these two scenarios, they took them like, so they split the groups of the attorneys in half, and half got more details than the other half. So I'm sure they'll talk more about that too, but we don't know what those details are yet, but we'll get to it. So see what factor that plays. So the defendant in Case 1 was more likely to be guilty, and Twiz,
that the defendant in Case 1 was more likely to be convicted at trial.
Okay.
95 attorneys were in our condition where a misdemeanor conviction would have its normal consequences in each case. 94 attorneys were in our condition where a misdemeanor conviction would have an abnormally severe impact.
And so that is what I was just referencing, where they split them in half and then gave one half a different sentencing, potential sentence, right? Abnormally severe impact. Okay. Here we go. Okay.
In both cases, we conducted a logistic regression using our misdemeanor impact condition, attorney estimates of probability of conviction at trial, and attorney estimates of defendant guilt to predict plea advice. We also controlled for gender, which was not the same across our experimental manipulations. In our normal misdemeanor condition, 37% of participants were male, and in our severe misdemeanor condition, 48% of participants were male. The results for Case 1, marijuana, and Case 2, sexual assault, are displayed in Table 4.
Here we go.
Table 4, the logistics regression results using impact of misdemeanor, probability of conviction at trial estimate, and probability of guilt estimate, and gender to predict plea advice. 0, go to trial. 1, plead guilty.
I don't know how to interpret this. Twiz, do they give us a key for that? It's probably somewhere on here. We probably skipped it.
I don't think so. These people are really bad with their tables.
Maybe we have to pay the money to get the full thing or something. I don't know. I mean, this is the national whatchamacall. But it might be down here somewhere. Anyways, I don't know that we would be able to explain this anyways. Bunch of numbers. Anywho. All right. The best part is, guess what? They summarize it here. All right.
In both cases, the probability of conviction estimate and the probability of guilt estimate were significant predictors of plea advice, such that as estimations of the probability of conviction increased as estimators of the probability of guilt increased. The chance of advising the client to plead guilty increased. In Case 1, misdemeanor impact was also a significant predictor, such that when getting a misdemeanor would have a more severe consequence for the defendant, namely influencing immigration status. Attorneys were more likely to advise the client to go to trial. Finally, we looked specifically at attorneys who had stated that there were less than 50% chance that the defendant was guilty in each case, to specifically examine the decisions of attorneys who believed the defendant was probably innocent.
Interesting. So let's make sure that's clear. So a less than 50%. So they gave them a number. They said, okay, we're going to give you a number. There's a less than 50% chance that they were actually guilty. So that means that there's a more than 50% chance that they're actually innocent, right? And how does that impact things? Okay.
In Case 1, 29 attorneys thought that there was less than a 50% chance that the defendant was guilty. Of these attorneys, 45% recommended that the defendant plead guilty.
Okay, let's break that down. Hold on. Let's break that down. So less than 50% chance that they're guilty. Wow. Okay. So this is where the sentencing has such an impact. That's what we're seeing, right? So they're being told in Case 1, that's the schoolgirl with the marijuana or whatever. And again, that's with this idea that she could have a harsh sentence with like her immigration status or what have you. if they told them that there was a less than 50% chance that she was guilty, 45% still recommended that she plead guilty. What do you make of that, Twiz?
I don't know. Is it for like a lesser charge that wouldn't affect immigration status or something? Who knows? We need more information.
Yeah, we don't know yet. And again, it might be in the appendix information down below. But still, I think that the point being, at least at this part of the assessment, is that the stakes were so high. In other words, like, well, looking at the cost risk analysis, right? Sometimes it's like you get offered a great deal, but other times it's like the stakes are like, you know what? This would be, you could really compare this to your death penalty case, right? LWOP is not a great deal. Let's put it there. LWOP is not a great deal, right? But when it's LWOP or death, it doesn't matter. Like, you see what I mean? So if the max sentence, if you go to trial and you're convicted, you know, if that is just so severe that it's like disproportionately severe, it's almost like it wouldn't even really matter what they offer if it's less than that, right? Maybe that's kind of where this is going.
It could be, yeah.
But again, I just find that interesting. That's kind of what this must speak to, right? That in order for 45% of the attorneys recommend that the girl from case 1 plead guilty, even though more than likely, more than 50% chance that she's actually innocent, right? A logistic regression showed that in this group, attorneys in the condition with a severe impact, there it is, severe impact of a misdemeanor, were less likely to recommend pleas. But there was no significant influence of likelihood of conviction at trial or gender. We examined the reasons why these attorneys who thought there was a less than 50% chance that the client was guilty would recommend a guilty plea. Here we go, Twiz. Responses referred to the fact that she would be unlikely to win at trial. And here's the examples that they gave as they got to answer these open-endedly, right? For example, she seems unlikely to win at trial and the more serious consequences of a felony conviction. For example, the plea would mean that she would not lose her civil rights, would not have a felony conviction on her record. I would want to protect her in a case of future police contact. The risks of a felony conviction, along with a lifetime of consequences associated with that conviction, are too great to accept in this scenario when compared with the far less significant consequences of explaining a misdemeanor charge. Welcome, Mittens for Kittens. And I love that name, by the way. That's awesome. Great name. Great name. We love mittens and we love kittens. Reminds me of that old Sunny episode. Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
You've seen it, right? What? Kitten mittens? For real? Somebody must have seen this in the chat.
The last time I watched Always Sunny was like 12 years ago or something like that. And I think I was caught up at that time, but I haven't really watched since.
The Kitten Mittens one is one of the earlier seasons, actually.
I've probably seen it. I just don't remember it by that name. I don't know.
Oh, it's so fucking funny. I wish I could play a snippet of it, but you know, copyright. And Amelia's saying it makes sense when it's the low charges, but again, and that's exactly why. Because remember, case 1 is the misdemeanor, the marijuana or whatever. But remember, case 2 is the SA. And in many states, North Carolina included, you can face LWOP. You can face life without parole for SA. So they're getting there because case 2 is the one where you're going to be seeing it. We'll see how that affects the data. But I see what you're saying. And I mean, we brought this up as well, like many times, right? Like when you're dealing with the lower level charges, it's a different landscape than when you're dealing with things like LWOP versus death, right? But we'll see how else they go with this because we haven't gotten to their thoughts on the attorney's thoughts that they surveyed on case 2, which is the one that, you know, I'm sure we'll see them bring that up and as far as like a life sentence. And then here we go. Speaking of case 2, right? All right. Responses referred to the fact that the risk of trial would be too high. The risk too high for trial, but I would not push the client to make this decision. And then here we go, that juries and, I scrolled down. I need to start at the beginning of this paragraph. Here we go. Speaking of case 2, this is the one with the essay. 65 attorneys thought that there was a less than 50% chance that the defendant was guilty. So again, same statistical odds in terms of guilt versus innocence as the first case. So less than 50% chance that they're guilty, more than 50% chance that they're innocent. Of these attorneys, 22% recommended that the defendant plead guilty. So let's look at the difference in numbers. So in case 1, We have the same thing here, less than 50% chance that they're guilty, but 45% recommended they plead guilty. In case 2, same thing, less than 50% chance that they're guilty, but 22% recommended that they plead guilty. Interesting. A logistic regression showed that in this group, attorneys who thought there was a higher chance of conviction at trial were more likely to recommend pleading guilty. But there was no significant influence of our misdemeanor manipulation or gender. We examined the reasons why these attorneys who thought there was a less than 50% chance that the client was guilty would recommend a guilty plea. And then here's the responses, right? Risk of trial is too high, but I would not push the client to make this decision. And then I figured this would come up, that juries in child sexual abuse cases often believe the child. For example, it'll be his word against the client, and juries are liable to believe the child. And that the likely penalty if convicted would be very serious. For example, he could face decades in prisons and many other severe repercussions from a felony conviction of this nature. No one could risk the mandatory felony penalties on sex crimes when offered a misdemeanor. Yeah, and I mean, in North Carolina, they take it really, 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 really seriously. Like I said, you can face life without parole. And then even if you don't end up with life without parole, the whole sex offender registry thing, it's like, it's potentially for life anyway. It's really, they take it really seriously, as they should. But you can see how that would be a factor, which is what they're discussing. So now, speaking of which, a discussion. You want to take a turn, Twiz? Prepare? Twiz,
Discussion. This study provides what is, to our knowledge, the first empirical study of attorney perspectives on plea bargaining and attorney plea recommendations. Although our data is only from a relatively small sample of attorneys, it confirms concerns that have been raised in the legal literature and the psycho-legal literature regarding the extent to which innocent defendants are pleading guilty and the procedures in the current plea system that seem to encourage this practice. Results provide important insight into how often innocent defendants are and should be pleading guilty in the current system, attorney perceptions of their role in the plea system generally and this practice specifically, and the extent to which guilt and innocence might influence attorneys' advice. This insight allows us to form conclusions about limitations in the current system and to better understand how attorney advice might be shaping plea practice.
Ooh.
Innocent defendants do plead guilty, but it is unclear how often. Scholars supporting plea bargaining have argued that innocent defendants would be unlikely to find plea offers attractive, again, as far as to describe the problem as of innocent defendants pleading guilty as barely a perceptible theoretical ripple when compared with other costs in the plea bargaining system.
Interesting. So what they're saying, some scholars are saying there's no way someone who's innocent will plead guilty. But then we're getting to the however.
Yeah, who's the scholars though? Are these actual attorneys or
these
are they
people from 1992, so they don't know.
Are they guilters, you know?
For real.
That's what I want to know. However, accumulating research suggests that innocent defendants might be pleading guilty fairly frequently. Our results support this accumulating research.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to note real quick. Let's note real quick that as far as the people who say that, oh yeah, people who are innocent wouldn't plead guilty, you've got 2 studies, both from 1992. Compare that to the studies that suggest that innocent defendants would be pleading guilty fairly frequently. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 studies, and they're all 2010 or later 2003 or later with the most recent of 2017. So between the 2 categories, which one seems to have more evidence to back it up? Right?
The second one.
Yes, Twiz. A+. Good job.
I'm wondering if it's just defense attorneys are bad at explaining what reasonable doubt is or something, because you would think that juries wouldn't be finding innocent people guilty that often when they weren't, you know?
Yeah, I mean, sadly they do. And I mean, that's why, you know, of the people that end up getting exonerated later on, I'm guaranteed there's way more people who should be exonerated who haven't been, right? That's only going to be a small percentage because like we saw earlier, it's very difficult to be exonerated even when there's exonerating evidence when you've pled guilty and you've said you've done a crime. Catch 22. Go figure, right? plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit, and then it's difficult when evidence comes out to say, oh yeah, you really didn't do it. It's difficult to go back and, say, yeah, I'm exonerated, right? It's just crazy.
Yeah, something's not right here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, what Random Girl said is a big factor, right? Just the power, okay, thinking like on the psychology level, right? The power of suggestion. I mean, maybe that, and like by which I mean a circumstantial case. When you've got prosecutors and, they have the burden, but they have a lot of advantages. First of all, they have all the resources. Second of all, they get to go first with opening statements, right? Another thing, in closing arguments, in the vast majority of states, the state goes first and then they get to go last. Again, the justification being they have the burden, but if you've got all the resources and then you add those to it, right? And then you've got the power of a jury, or the power of suggestion, and then also the possibility or likelihood of a jury, following their story, right? And being susceptible to that power of suggestion, especially when it's the first thing they hear. I mean, I wonder, an interesting thought here for another study, if they could do it with like a mock, they would have to do like a number of mock trials. I wonder how it would change things if they did a study with what would happen if in opening statements, the defense went first. Just that one change. I would love to examine that issue. What would happen if you'd have two groups, right? You have a control group, okay? And then you have the other group. And in the control group, everything goes as usual, where the prosecution goes first for opening statements. Everything goes as what we usually see. In the second group, you set it up where everything's the same. The objections are the same. The attorneys are, facts, everything's identical with only one change. The defense goes first for opening statements. And I wonder what effect that would have. What do you think, Twiz?
It could have a big impact because psychology shows that people believe the first thing that they hear and the last thing that they hear. They miss a lot of the middle.
Yep, I would agree. I think I agree. And I wonder if anyone's ever done such a study, because I totally think that would change things. It's whatever they hear first, just think about like first impressions, right? They talk about like if you're meeting someone new or whatever, first impressions of anything, right? Even though juries are told, hold out until you've seen all the evidence, all the studies show that most jurors have, even if they aren't supposed to, have really made up their minds, even if it's on a subconscious level, by the time opening statements are done. And whoever goes first is more likely to gain the jurors on their side first. It's just like, it's like a race when you're a kid, right? Who first to the finish line, you know what I mean? And so imagine you're a jury and you're paneled onto the jury and you hear that first sentence. And when you've got a powerful opening statement from a prosecutor and not a crap one, right? Like they can get you in their corner from the get-go. And like you said, Twiz, totally, I 100% agree. Once the jury, if the jury is with the prosecution from the prosecution's opening statement, the defense has an uphill battle from second one, right? If you imagine, moment, let's say like, what should we say? Like ground zero, moment zero, right? Is when the defense starts their opening statements, right? And let's just say that from before they've done anything, they're already working an uphill battle because the jury is already on the side of the prosecution. What a challenge, right? Because now they have to change everybody's mind. And as we know, it's a lot harder to change somebody's mind when they've made up their mind, right? Versus convincing them in the first place. You know what I mean, Twiz? Yeah.
I absolutely do.
So I think that would be really interesting. And I mean, I feel like, honestly, I think
that's why I know this case is a psyop. Just saying.
Heard that. I don't even still really understand what a psyop is, but that is okay. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I understand the whole thing. The state has the burden. I still think it would be at the very least an interesting study to see what would happen if the defense goes first with opening statements. But I feel like it would be more fair. That's my personal opinion. I feel like it would be more fair. Here's what I would say. I would say let the prosecution still have two closes. Let's say the state or the federal government, they still get two closing arguments, right? They get to go first and then honorable. That's fine. What if they keep that? But let's just say, can we let the defense go first with opening statements and see what happens? And I feel like that would actually make it way more fair, in my opinion, personally. psychological operation. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, then daily life is a psyop, isn't it then?
Well, I mean, depending on how you want to go down that, yeah, it really could be in some situations for sure. But psychological operations, like I would argue, COVID was a psychological operation, and the similarities between this case and COVID are quite strong when you look at the media coverage at the beginning. Because again, people believe like the first thing that they hear, right? And it's very hard to change their mind afterwards. And COVID, the first thing they started doing was like, everyone's gonna die, blah, blah, blah. That just the media coverage is nonstop, boom, boom, boom. And the same thing, they were pre-programming people for this case, saying that the killer was an incel before Bryan was even arrested.
Right.
So there's just a lot of similarities between the two.
Well, and in any criminal case, the vast majority of them, they're pre-programming everybody to believe that the defendant is guilty, right? I mean, that's mainstream.
I mean, that's kind of like the hard part, because I do believe that more guilty people are arrested than innocent people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're not doing like a terrible job from that standpoint. But we also shouldn't just believe that people are guilty because they were arrested.
100%. Yep. Definitely agree. Okay, our results support this accumulating research. They indicate that almost all of our attorneys have experienced dealing with clients who claim to be innocent but plead guilty. Let me say that again. Almost all of these attorneys said they had experience dealing with clients who claim to be innocent but pled guilty, although they don't have an indication of how often. Importantly, when asked about the proportion of defendants who pled guilty but are really innocent or guilty only of a lesser charge, there was very little consensus among attorneys, with estimates ranging from less than 5% to over 50%, and many choosing not to give a response at all. Although, note that this question was only given to 46 of our attorneys. This is understandable, since it is very difficult for an attorney to know whether a client is factually innocent or guilty. However, importantly, 27 of the 30 attorneys who answered this question believed that of the defendants who pled guilty, in their experience, 5% or more were factually innocent or guilty of a lesser charge. If true, this would make plea bargaining a very important cause of wrongful conviction. Although note that wrongful convictions resulting from plea are likely to be convictions for lesser sentences than those resulting from trial. And oh my God, is that an airplane? And certainly more
it might have been.
And certainly more of a problem than a barely perceptible theoretical ripple. All right. The majority of attorneys agree that there are situations in which innocent defendants should plead guilty and have advised accordingly. Holy shit. Let me read that again. The majority of attorneys agree there are situations in which innocent defendants should plead guilty and have advised accordingly. Our results indicate that the majority of attorneys do believe that there are situations in the current system in which innocent defendants should plead guilty and have advised defendants who they believe to be innocent to plead guilty. Specifically, almost half of our attorneys indicated that they had advised clients who they believed to be innocent to plead guilty. Results also provided insight into when attorneys might provide this kind of advice. Oh boy! With the leading two reasons being when a cost-benefits analysis promotes this, and when defendants are threatened with severe punishments at trial, even when there is not a high chance of conviction at trial. Let me repeat that part. Y'all hear this? In terms of the reasons being that they would advise, when they would advise an innocent defendant to plead guilty. The first reason was being defendant, when a cost-benefit analysis promotes it. But then the second reason, when defendants are threatened with severe punishments at trial, even when there is not a high chance of conviction. Ding, 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 ding. Literally, I think what happened with Bryan Kohberger here. Because this, again, as I've said a million times, the state conceded as much that they had plenty of holes in their case. They were not sure, or they would not have made the deal. They were not sure they could even get a conviction, let alone a death sentence, right? Death verdict. However, the chance of the conviction, and in this particular case, leading to potentially death, it's just, there it is. The severe punishment outweighed essentially the shitty evidence or the holes in the evidence. That's what that boils down to, guys. The cost-benefit analysis scenario fits with arguments justifying the plea system on the basis that innocent defendants are able to and should be able to enjoy the benefits of pleading guilty if this is their risk preference. And literally, that's exactly what I've been saying, right? That they should have that same right, even though it's fucked up. According to these arguments, persons at risk of unjust conviction may prefer a certain but low punishment in a plea bargain to the risk of conviction and higher punishment after trial. And this can lead to less punishment for defendants who are truly innocent. These arguments are based on the idea that defendants will be able to rationally weigh the costs and benefits of a plea offer in a sensible way. However, importantly, our research suggests that from the perspective of attorneys, there are other reasons that innocent defendants may find pleading guilty the most sensible option, given the current system. Defendants are threatened with such harsh punishments at trial, something that is exacerbated by mandatory minimum sentences, and offered very lenient plea deals. For example, a sentence of time served, 8 months, and a misdemeanor conviction when threatened with a murder conviction if convicted at trial. This kind of discrepancy is likely to lead to innocent defendants pleading guilty, even when there's a very small probability. Let me just say this much. This is an interesting point, which is saying that when the state makes a really good plea deal, like this example, right? So let's say that, what did they give? It's a murder charge, right? They've been charged with murder, right? But the state offers them this beautiful deal, such as time served and a misdemeanor conviction, right? That while that seems like a really great thing, because it's like, okay, yeah, that's a great plea for in other words, the defendant will win if they take that plea deal, right? That's not just like a shit deal. But you can also see the flip side of that, which is because it's such a good deal, guess what? You're more likely to have innocent people pleading guilty. Very interesting point with this. Because the flip side of that is like, well, if we don't make these plea deals super compelling, or, for example, in favor of the defendant because they get a really good deal, then that's also not fair. You see what I mean? Like, it's like, how do you weigh it out, right? What is more important? Is it more important to give defendants, whether innocent or guilty, these plea deals that actually are in their favor, right? Or to have plea deals that are maybe less drastic and then cut down on the number of people who are innocent pleading guilty? Now, I don't know the answer. What do you guys think? Twiz, what do you think on that?
I mean, it's like a case by case thing, you know. Unfortunately, I don't know. It's just it's a crazy system. Because, like, in that situation, it almost seems like they could be giving you a plea deal, hoping you would just get it over with, so you can't sue them afterwards, you know?
Well, let's take lawsuits. Let's not add any, lawsuits in the mix. Just from, like, a policy perspective, right? Or, like what is the answer, right? Like, because it seems like at face value, it's a good thing. And I do agree that it's a good thing, right? Like, and again, take, for example, that North Carolina example we looked at, right? Where that defendant was given the deal of a lifetime, or like a Katie McBanois deal, right? When defendants are given really good deals, and it's like that's a good thing, right? To me, that seems okay. Like, that's more fair, right? Than like, okay, you take a plea deal, but like, you're only getting 5 years less or whatever, right? It's like, I feel like if they're going to plead guilty, they should get it something that really reduces their charges or their time served, or both. But the flip side of that being, well, now you have more innocent people pleading guilty. I would still say that, given weighing that out, I still think the first thing is more of a priority in my mind, because like what we're seeing here, really, and guilty or not, or innocent or not, right? Like, we've seen this borne out from what they've even surveyed here. Like, the bigger factor in determining how to advise a client is not whether they're actually innocent or actually guilty. It's, what are the consequences? What are they risking? What will be their consequences and their sentence? What will be on the record? But again, the problem being that then you do have innocent people pleading guilty. And one could even say the better the plea deals, as in better for the client, the more the numbers would increase, right, of innocent people pleading guilty.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's like, Trial would cost you $10,000, but if you plead guilty, you only have to pay $200. And like that shouldn't be.
Yeah, or trial could
Good.
cost you 50 years, but pleading guilty could cost you 2 years of your
Yeah,
life.
I mean, or that too. It's just crazy.
This kind of discrepancy is keep reading, is likely to lead to innocent defendants pleading guilty. Yep. Even when there is only a very small probability of conviction at trial. Yep. So in other words, the choice to plead might not even be as much about, I mean, that's what they're saying. It's less about the probability of conviction and more about what they have to lose if they do get convicted. So let me read the sentence again. This kind of discrepancy is likely to lead to innocent defendants pleading guilty even when there is only a very small probability of conviction at trial, and the gravity of the threatened punishment does not truly give defendants a fair choice in this situation. This problem can be exacerbated by the practice of vertical overcharging, whereby prosecutors include different substantive offenses in an initial charge with the intent to dismiss one or more of them. All right, your turn, Twiz.
Attorneys who advise clients who want to go to trial to plead guilty more than they advise clients who want to plead guilty to go to trial.
All right.
Our results suggest some disagreement among attorneys regarding their role in the plea bargaining process, with some attorneys providing clients with advice on their decisions based on their knowledge and experience, and other attorneys feeling their job is only to provide information to clients who should then be left to make their own decisions. Our results suggest that attorneys are more likely to encourage a client who wants to go to trial to enter a plea bargain than to encourage a client who wants to plea bargain to go to a trial. Although, note that this could be because more clients have a bias towards trial rather than because attorneys have a bias towards pleas. Interestingly, this difference is driven largely by female attorneys who are more likely reluctant than male attorneys to encourage a client who wants to plead guilty to go to trial. Responses show that the difference may be due to a reluctance to be responsible for imposing a large risk on a client, especially when the consequences of conviction at trial could be severe, even if chances of this outcome are low. Mm-hmm. Attorneys who had not ever encouraged a client who wanted to take a plea bargain also frequently said that they did not do so because the decision was up to the client, although note that this consideration was important to far fewer attorneys when asked whether they had ever encouraged a client who wanted to go to trial to accept a plea bargain. 8 attorneys compared to 26. Importantly, the proportion of attorneys noting that they had encouraged a client who wanted to go to trial to plead guilty was greater among our attorneys who said they had encouraged a client who suspected to be innocent to plead guilty. Mm-hmm. This does suggest that attorneys may be leading to a greater number of innocent clients pleading guilty, although this is not necessarily a bad thing given the current system and the considerations discussed in this paper.
And that's literally what I was just saying, right? It's like at the end of the day, does the guilt or innocence really matter when the system is the way that it is? I mean, and long and short of it really is like there's the system, right? But again, I mean, it's just tough, right? But like that literally is articulating what I was just saying. This is in much more clear terms here, right? This part right here. A greater number of innocent clients pleading guilty, although it's not necessarily a bad thing given the current system. All right.
Guilt and innocence do influence attorney advice. The results of our experimental task confirm that even in cases in which attorneys think a client is innocent, they may encourage them to plead guilty. 45% of attorneys in our first case and 22% of our attorneys in our second case who were less than 50% sure the defendant was guilty said they would advise them to plead guilty. Responses suggest that although some attorneys base this advice on a high chance of conviction at trial, attorneys were also influenced by a reluctance to expose clients to the risks of a severe outcome if convicted at trial. Importantly, especially in our case 2, where there was no impact of our severe misdemeanor consequences condition, some attorneys were advising clients that they thought were likely not guilty to plead guilty, even where the plea would have severe consequences for them. In case 2, this was loss of a career in teaching. However, overall results of this test did show that as attorney estimates of guilt increase, the tendency to recommend a guilty plea also increased. even when controlling for the probability of conviction at trial. This suggests that attorneys are more reluctant to encourage defendants who they believe are innocent to plead guilty.
So there we go. All righty. I think that for you guys, if ever you encounter someone who's like, someone who's innocent would never plead guilty, I mean, looking at this alone, I mean, first of all, common sense should say that that's not true. But if that's not enough for them because they don't have common sense, this lays it out. This lays it out point blank here. All right.
Is it my turn still?
I can go. You want me to go?
Jesus! Limitations and future directions. The finding of our study should be interpreted in light of some important limitations. First, several attorneys completing our hypothetical plea scenarios noted that not enough information had been provided for them to truly assess the cases. That's what I would say. For example, they did not have access to witness statements, were not able to ask questions of the defendant, did not have evidence of the history of the defendant, and did not have expert opinions on how the quality of case evidence, e.g. memory evidence in case 2. This information would allow attorneys to better assess the evidence and their clients' chances at trial, and would thus likely influence plea advice. In addition, we did not include preferences of defendants in our vignettes. I don't know.
Vignettes.
And the vignettes were hypothetical and differed in important respects from real legal cases. Another limitation of this work is that it relied on self-report responses by a subset of attorneys. Our findings are therefore influenced by which attorneys chose to participate in the study and what they chose to report to us. Our findings should also be considered alongside reports of defendants about their interactions with attorneys, which suggests that in some cases the interaction of clients and attorneys may be limited. The amount of time spent with an attorney is likely to influence plea decisions and is not some.
That makes sense.
That doesn't make sense.
Why not?
I'm joking.
Oh. Twiz.
But is it more or less, It is not something that we examined in this study. An attorney who only spends a few minutes with a client prior to a plea hearing may leave a client feeling that they have no option but to plead guilty due to the rushed context in which the discussion takes place, which may leave them with little confidence in the attorney. An attorney who spends longer with a defendant is likely to be able to more clearly convey the pros and cons of each decision and leave the client with a clear understanding that they can base their decision on. Results should be interpreted with these limitations in mind, and future research should investigate the findings of this study further when considering real legal cases in which attorneys have advised clients. Future research should also gather more responses from each state to enable comparisons between attorneys from states with different legal infrastructure, e.g. whether the state allows Alford pleas or not, and data on different types of cases to further compare whether plea recommendations differ depending on the type of case.
All right, now I'll take back over here with the conclusions. Thank you, Twiz. Twiz reads, love it. Our new favorite segment. Okay, conclusions. In this paper, we examined attorneys' perspectives on the extent to which innocent defendants are and should be pleading guilty in the current system and on their role in this complex system. We also examined ways in which defense attorneys consider guilt and innocence when advising on pleas using a hypothetical case. Results show that in the current system, innocent defendants are pleading guilty and attorneys are advising them to do so in certain cases, despite being more reluctant to advise pleading guilty when a client is more likely to be innocent. More importantly, results suggest that in the current system, these attorneys are likely doing the right thing and protecting their clients from severe consequences at trial. A theme that has come out of this study is that in the current system, there are cases in which, from a practical perspective, innocent defendants should plead guilty, even when the chances that they'll be convicted at trial are not high. Let me say that again. A theme that has come out of this study is that in the current system, there are cases in which, from a practical perspective, innocent defendants should plead guilty even when the chances that they will be convicted at trial are not high. Importantly, a leading reason for this is that there is such a discrepancy between a plea offer and the outcome if convicted at trial that exercising the right to a trial becomes too risky, even when the chances of a conviction are low. Yep. The severe risks that can result from going to trial also appear to be making attorneys reluctant to advise clients to go to trial, since attorneys do not want to be responsible for imposing the risk of a severe conviction on a client when they could have received a much more lenient sentence in exchange for pleading guilty. This undercuts justifications that have been made for innocent defendants pleading guilty, since it takes away the consent of the defendant and the ability of the attorney to prevent the conviction of innocent defendants. When confronted with the chance of a possible murder conviction versus a misdemeanor, there you go, Amelia, defendants and attorneys often do not truly have a choice, even where the chances of conviction are low. This is literally what Amelia was talking about, right? This discrepancy when you're talking like something like a murder conviction versus something that's a misdemeanor, right? Like, and I was saying the same thing. The landscape is different. The cost risk analysis is different. The whole thing is different. So, you're more likely, I think, to see, well, I guess you see pleas in different cases either way, but the reasons would be different, right? In other words, even when the chances of a conviction are low, I think the greater the possible risk if you're convicted, for example, with more serious crimes, the chance of pleading guilty, even when the chances of conviction are low, are going to be higher versus something that's a lower level offense. Thus, attorney advice may be driving up the number of innocent defendants pleading guilty while also protecting innocent defendants from disastrous consequences at trial. That's quite a dichotomy there. Let me read that one again. Thus, attorney advice may be driving up the number of innocent defendants pleading guilty while also protecting innocent defendants from disastrous consequences at trial. Wow, what do you want? I don't even know what to call that. What a thing to wrap the head around. I don't even have words. So perhaps 95% of innocent defendants are accepting pleas when they would have been found innocent at trial, while 5% of innocent defendants are avoiding disastrous consequences that would have occurred at a jury trial. Put simply, attorneys' hands are tied. All they can do is try to protect clients as best they can in the current system, rather than actually negotiating a just outcome. That's fucking sad. Let me read this again. I'm gonna read this.
It's got to just because of how juries think and behave, I don't know. That's wild to me.
Yeah. Let me read this part again. So perhaps 95% of innocent defendants are accepting pleas when they would have been found innocent at trial, while 5% of innocent defendants are avoiding disastrous consequences that would have occurred at a jury trial. Put simply, attorneys' hands are tied. All they can do is try to protect their clients as best they can in the current system, rather than actually negotiating a just outcome. I agree. Mittens says that's so depressing, isn't it? This is really right here the summary of this entire fucking thing, and it's really sad. Like, one more time, just because I think this is important, right? Put simply, attorneys' hands are tied. All they can do is try to protect their clients as best they can in the current system, rather than actually negotiating a just outcome. And I will say, for anybody who's trying to talk shit about Ann Taylor, like,
I will punch them in their faces.
Same. Y'all will have both Twiz and I coming for you. So, I mean, literally, she saved a life. And again, as we're seeing, actual guilt or innocence is really not even a deciding factor when you're weighing the cost benefit analysis of a plea, right? And that's what this is showing. These results provide further evidence of the need for reforms in the current system, and particularly highlight the need to reduce the discrepancies between sentences and charges given in exchange for pleading guilty and the potential outcomes at trial. This could be done either through constraining the discounts offered by prosecutors in exchange for pleas, or by introducing plea-based ceilings so that trial sentences could not exceed plea sentences by more than a modest amount. If it is really the case that someone who has committed a certain crime should get a certain sentence, this should be the case for all people who have committed that crime, not just for those who chose to exercise their right to a jury trial. Yeah. Reducing the discrepancy between outcomes if convicted at trial and outcomes when pleading guilty would allow attorneys, and that's it, right? Like I was saying, that discrepancy, reducing the discrepancy. This is sort of like their solution, if you could say they're offering one. Reducing the discrepancy between outcomes if convicted at trial and outcomes when pleading guilty would allow attorneys to appropriately advise their clients absent the fear of their client receiving a disproportionately high punishment. This is it. I'm going to read this one more time. This is crucial. This is it. Reducing the discrepancy between outcomes if convicted at trial and outcomes when pleading guilty would allow attorneys to appropriately advise their clients absent the fear of their client receiving a disproportionately high punishment, thus improving their ability to effectively negotiate justice and protect innocent defendants. I just got goosebumps. Fuck yeah. Justice. Negotiate justice and protect innocent defendants. Well said. Well said. That is a really, I think, appropriately worded and well thought out and thoroughly analyzed outcome and possible solution to everything that we just read through. What do you think about this, Twiz? Twiz?
I don't know. Why are you putting me on the spot?
You don't have to. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You know, it's just sort of like, you know, if you want to weigh in on things, you don't have to.
No, I'm just wondering, like, about the attorneys. Like, I always wonder, or not the attorneys, the jury, you know, because, like, it's a gamble. The crazy thing is, like the Karen Reed trial, right? I would think that you're absolutely crazy if you convicted that girl of murder, at least, right? But what if they just had a different jury, you know?
Well, like in trial number 1, you mean?
No, because I mean, that case, it was presented differently. But, like, could a different jury have convicted her even though the state's case was completely horseshit, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's the risk right there. You just never know.
I mean, and the only way to thwart that, right, is with a really thorough voir dire process. I mean, that's the only thing that
I don't even think you could do it. I don't even think you could do it with that. Otherwise, they would do it, you know?
Well, they did it successfully with Karen Reed's retrial, right?
Right.
You know, like, that's the example. Like the really thorough voir dire. Remember, they even like looked into people's social media and all that. They really picked a solid jury, a stellar jury. And again, it was also a younger jury, which in this particular case was a good thing. That may not always be the case for every trial, but
I thought Alan Jackson's answer to the question about the jury was pretty funny. Did you watch that?
What's the answer?
His interview he just did with Turtle Boy.
Yeah, I watched that, but I don't remember what you're referencing though.
He said he picked jurors that didn't overthink things.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. I found that interesting. Yes.
See, like, I like the psychology of it all, you know? I'm always into the psychology, and I really just think that attorneys aren't doing a good job at explaining reasonable doubt or something. Like, I don't know. It's crazy to me.
Amelia is asking a great question. Wouldn't pleas be more common with lesser charges where there's actually wiggle room that exists? That's the thing that's so funny. And it really just depends on what's offered and it really depends on what the stakes are. Because the thing is, when we read the whole death penalty one, the people who plead the most are people who are faced with the death penalty because the stakes are so high, even though the best they can get is LWOP. And that's exactly what, I mean, that's the thing. Like I don't remember the statistics because it was the other article, but it was like crazy. I mean, it was like what, almost half or something. Do you remember, Twiz, or do you remember, Kane? Because you were reading last night. The number of people who had the death penalty cases that plead, in other words, the rate of pleas versus jury trials is like exponential. And knowing the best they can get is LWOP. So when the stakes are higher, right? Again, it's sort of like if it's a lower level crime, you have an incentive to plead because it's like, oh, you get better things. Whereas like if it's a death penalty case, you just get the what is your carrot at the end, or your what is your reward at the end? Oh, you just don't die, right? It's like it's not good. It's just less bad. Does that make sense? Like, for example, with a lower level crime, like, oh, you walk with time served versus 10 years in jail or 10 years in prison, you get something good out of that. Versus if it's like, okay, life and without possibility of parole versus a death sentence, and you plead and you get life without possibility of parole, it's just less bad. There's nothing good that you gain. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I would think of it.
I agree.
This is not it's funny. So, and also welcome, Kane. Thank you for joining us. How is your head today? Yeah, it was like 70%. My brain was also thinking 70, but I didn't want to say that. But now that 70 was what I was thinking, Kane. 70% was what I was thinking. So the fact that you remember that, because Kane was reading last night, for anyone who wasn't here, Kane and I were reading together. 70%. That's what I thought too. So there we go. 70%. Wild, guys. Also, for anyone who hasn't heard, speaking of Karen Reed, there's some crazy news in that case. I know tomorrow we have the Bryan Kohberger hearing with the media or the gag order. I don't know. I mean, basically, I'm going to weigh it out and see like if there's anything interesting that comes of that. My expectation is that nothing's going to come of that. But has anybody here not heard about what happened just breaking as of like a few hours ago with Karen Reed and the person from the grand jury? Does anybody, Twiz, do you know about that?
I do not.
So a Karen Reed, well, okay, it's not 100% clear that it's a Karen Reed juror, but it seems like it is. Someone who was on the grand jury has been charged with federal crimes because they talked about what they did on the grand jury. You're not allowed to do that, and they could actually face jail time. And they just took a plea deal. And the terms of the plea deal is that the judge can sentence this juror to literally however long in prison, however long. There's literally no sentencing scheme. Can sentence her to literally anything that he sees fit. Plus, there's all these fines and stuff. But for talking about what went down at the grand jury. And the other thing about it is that when you look at the timing of it, first of all, it shows that this was going on before Turtle Boy ever talked about the case. And then second of all, what it looks like is that the federal investigation is still ongoing, despite what Bryan said. Although I know none of us trusted what Bryan said, but like this is proof of that. And it's proof that he was lying about it being closed.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
Remember how for a long time they've said that there's like a dual investigation going on with the Idaho Kohberger stuff?
What do you mean?
Like there's a federal investigation going alongside with MPD or whatever.
Like right now?
No, just like, do you remember how at the beginning they said
right,
that?
yeah, right. The feds were involved. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What if the Fed one is still going on, and that's why Bryan took the plea, because he's waiting for them to solve it, and then gonna be like, haha, told you I didn't do it, fuckers.
I mean, I suppose anything is possible. Yeah. Never thought I'd be on a boat.
It's a big blue watery road.
Yeah.
Poseidon, look at me. Oh.
And speaking, we have a new scroll friend who's probably like, what have I done? Welcome, Dana. We're just singing. Don't mind us.
I fucked a mermaid.
Welcome, Dana. Scroll crew, where we learn about the law and we are insane
on the internet. Therefore, it's true.
We have fun. We have fun. So now I'm going to tell you guys about this, what I was going to say earlier. And I was like, I'll tell you all later. Okay. So here's this crazy case that is going to go to trial more than likely. And like I said earlier, for you missed it,
I asked Denise if her handcuffs or if her hands were handcuffed behind her back. And after I had to explain what was going on, she said, oh, yeah.
Excellent. Wonderful. And everyone, welcome Dana, and also welcome back Cassidy. Okay, so here's what happened. Okay, so this is the case I was mentioning that literally would rival any of these high-profile cases that we follow and whatnot. Okay, so I'm going to be very broad because I don't want to give any facts of the case, but I'm going to give you just a general idea that could pertain to anything so that it's not too specific. Okay, so first of all, you've got a situation where it's a self-defense case. Okay, our client has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon with the intent to kill, which in North Carolina can carry just as the same sentencing as first-degree murder. It can result in life without parole. Okay. Okay. Now that's what this client's been charged with. Okay. Now imagine yourselves a scenario where that's the person who's been charged with this is like, okay, let's put it in the animal world. Okay. Let's put it in the animal world. Let's say that this client is a baby bunny, okay? And the person who, according to the government, this client assaulted with intent to kill is a grizzly bear or a crocodile or a T-Rex. Let's go with T-Rex. Let's go with a T-Rex. There we go. Let's say it's a T-Rex. T-Rex versus baby bunny. I'm not even sure that disparity is enough. And let's just say that this T-Rex also happens to be a former Marine. And let's just also say that this baby bunny happens to be handicapped and partially paralyzed, adding that to the mix.
Jesus Christ, this got morbid.
Okay. And now you've got a scenario that is very much what we've got here in this particular case. And again, we are representing the baby bunny. So, and then add to that the T-Rex has a decades-long history of things that you guys would not believe. And it's like if you're defending the baby bunny, you could not be happier with this going to trial. Let me just say. Now let's bear in mind that in a self-defense case, right? Remember, there's things that are different with a self-defense case. For example, things that would be inadmissible in other cases or other trials, such as character evidence of the alleged victim. In this case, the T-Rex, right?
Wait, the T-Rex is the victim?
Right? I know. Remember, the baby bunny is the one charged with the crime. So the T-Rex is the alleged victim, okay? I know. And so that this that character evidence that reflects negatively on the T-Rex can be admissible because in a self-defense case, right? The part of what you're going to be getting at, right, is like who was the first aggressor. Okay. Anyone that followed the Ezra McCandless trial, that was a whole thing that came in. And it was a whole thing. It's actually one of the exceptions. Let me pull it up from the Federal Rules of Evidence, guys. So you can take it from the rules and not just me talking. It is, let's see here, under 404A. Let me find it here. It's one of the exceptions to character evidence. Okay. So rule 404, right? Character evidence, other crimes, wrongs, or other character evidence. So exceptions for a defendant or a victim in a criminal case. The following exceptions apply in a criminal case. Okay. In a homicide case, okay, the prosecutor may offer evidence of the alleged, sorry, no, that's not the one I want. I want the other one. A defendant may offer evidence of the defendant's pertinent trait, but also they may offer, this is the more important one, they may offer evidence of the alleged victim's pertinent trait. The defendant may offer evidence of the alleged victim's pertinent trait. And again, this is character evidence. So do they have a history of starting fights? Do they have a history of killing people or bunnies? Do they have a history of domestic violence? Do they have a history of, you name it. Think of all the worst things that a person can have. And literally this T-Rex has got all of them. And we're talking documented history with a long string of victims. It is wild. All of the things. I wish I could be more specific because it would blow y'all's mind. But here's the other thing. If that weren't enough, and again, I'm having to be very broad here. If that weren't enough, add to that, this is in a county that I'd never even heard of, even though I was born and raised in North Carolina. This took place in a county that I've never even heard of, that, get this, has got a good old boys club system going on, that, guess what? The T-Rex, having a military background, right, gets all the fucking favors and all of that. Think of the good old boys club in the South, a la Murdoch, and combine that with like all the law enforcement being corrupt and favors for other law enforcement, like what we have in Karen Reed, and combine the two. And that's part of what is backing the T-Rex to make it impossible for the baby bunny. Okay, now here's what happened to me today. So this all just kind of came up today, but here's what I got to do today. This was incredible. So this T-Rex has a very important particular victim that's still alive that it's left in its wake, and this is a victim of decades. This victim has, it's like if you were to try to invent, if you were to say, in my wildest dreams, if I were to try to create a character or create a hypothetical situation of who could be literally the strongest possible witness for the defense, as in supporting the defense that it's self-defense and also negative towards the T-Rex, and you literally think of Twiz, throw it out there. If you were to try to create who would be your ideal, your beyond your wildest imagination, who would you want to be able to call as a witness that would basically shred the T-Rex to smithereens and be like, it's an obvious 10-minute acquittal for the defendant in this case? Go for
Samuel L. Jackson.
What? Was not expecting that. Okay. All right. In the chat, who would you, if you could create the ideal witness who would prove that the alleged victim is literally the T-Rex, and like literally it's like case closed. It's like, think of like the ARCA witnesses in Karen Reed, but times 100 for this particular set of circumstances I've given you guys. And what would you guys imagine?
Ooh,
like,
Morgan Freeman.
Okay. Sure.
Everyone listens to Morgan Freeman. You can't argue with me there.
Okay. But what about more pertaining to like things that would be helpful at trial? Like that would show that the alleged victim, the T-Rex, is like literally, I don't even know how to say all the words. Like the worst.
Yeah, but see, Samuel L. Jackson would get on the stand and be like, dude, that bunny, he did that motherfucker. You know? He dropped the motherfucker bomb and like people believe it. I'm just saying.
Okay.
That's a 100% success rate.
Well, okay, but remember, you also want to be able to have like documented evidence of these things happening. So like just dropping.
What's the crime? You haven't even told us the crime yet.
I did.
How
it was
can I
assault
think
with a deadly weapon with intent to kill.
But with what? Like what happened?
Same as first
We
degree
need the
murder.
story.
Twiz, I can't. I know. I'm being as vague as I possibly can. But like I gave this, that's why I gave the example of the baby bunny with the T-Rex. And let's just say that the T-Rex first was threatening the baby bunny. And the baby bunny went to defend themselves, but not really, because they really couldn't, because they're a baby bunny. And then the T-Rex is like, I'm going to like shred you, not just limb for limb. I'm going to shred you, all of your little baby bunny hairs, one after another individually. And I'm going to shred them all apart, like in response. Even though they're the first aggressor, and even though they have all the advantages, and the baby bunny's a baby bunny. Anyway.
This is a tale of Captain Jack Sparrow.
Mary says, hang with us, Dana. It's worth it. Thank you, Mary. And yes, Dana, we love you. So what Kane's following me. Was the T-Rex honorably discharged? So should have been dishonorably just discharged, but because of the Good Old Boys Club, circling on back to that, it's been hush kept under the rug to where no one actually knows the circumstances of how this person is no longer a Marine.
Is this a Karen Reed story?
Wrap your heads around that. No one even knows this person is no longer a Marine, and no one even knows how, because it's been hushed. However, this person volunteered willingly to go to Iraq and Afghanistan and has a huge history of psychiatric issues those have been documented and all kinds of things. But that's a great question. Thank you, Kane, for that question. Welcome, love, Tina. So this T-Rex / Marine has been given every type of benefit and all the things swept under the rug. Okay. Meanwhile, has all these secrets. Okay. So the baby, so back to this whole thing. Imagine the best witness you could possibly imagine. Okay. So imagine the best witness in this case potentially would be the T-Rex's ex-wife, who is still 6 years into like a contentious divorce, who the T-Rex for like 20 years did all the bad things to. Okay. And also add to that this T-Rex's ex-wife has no incentive, because this T-Rex's ex-wife doesn't even know the defendant, the baby bunny. The T-Rex's ex-wife does not know the baby bunny. So it's not like, oh, that's her friend. Like literally has no incentive to be like saying things that would support the case for the baby bunny. They're like just the T-Rex's ex-wife. Okay. So here's what I did today. I got to speak to the T-Rex's ex-wife. So I was tasked with the awesome, it's not even a task. I was told, okay, talk to this person who will definitely be a witness and will definitely be testifying at trial, okay? And basically ask all of the questions and get all of the information, put together a timeline, and basically asking questions that literally will be to support what needs to be proven for like an affirmative self-defense case. And I will just say, I was on the phone with this witness for like an hour and a half. And
did you intimidate them?
What? Twiz?
I mean, that's what Turtle Boy got in trouble for, talking to witnesses. So I'm just asking, did you intimidate them? Are they emotionally traumatized?
Not by me, but by the T-Rex, sure, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
go on.
So the T-Rex, in terms of the Marine T-Rex, is a dude, okay? And then the T-Rex's ex-wife is a lady T-Rex, but she's nice. She's a nice T-Rex. Not all T-Rexes are bad. So I know it's tough because I'm giving the animal scenario, but it's easier than trying to give humans because I don't want to be too specific. So this mean T-Rex, the Marine, right? That's had all these people, you know, covering things up, the Good Old Boys Club and all that, has all kinds of things, just everything, dude. And like literally the T-Rex's ex-wife has been saying it's only a matter of time before he kills people. Like it's only a matter of time. Who's next? Like who's next? Now remember, this T-Rex is the same T-Rex as in the alleged victim in this case, right? The alleged victim. It's wild. And we're representing the baby bunny. So the T-Rex's ex-wife, who has literally everything you could possibly want, right? In other words, flip it on its head. Like the alleged victim, the T-Rex, right? In this case is like actually the person who should be charged. Like not even a question. Why is this person, like already it's like, if you're the jury, you're like, why is the T-Rex not charged? And why is the baby bunny charged? Backwards. It's backwards scenario, right? And again, a lot of that has to do with the Good Old Boys Club and the county where this is. So anyways, so I got to talk to this witness and find out basically everything she knows and get all the tea and like, what is it that she has that can help support, you know, the baby bunny's self-defense case, and put together a timeline. And she's got like 4 huge fucking like crates of documents that she's going to bring by and like all this stuff. And literally y'all wouldn't even believe the stuff that I heard today. It's stuff that rivals, in terms of these things that the T-Rex has done, it rivals anything you've seen on any of these cases. Things that, you know, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I would think that I wouldn't be surprised anymore, right? I would think that I've heard it all, right? Like nothing would surprise me at this point. And I'll tell you guys, the number of times that I was speechless and completely surprised was like, I would say probably 8 or 10 times during that conversation. And that is saying a lot.
How long was the conversation?
An hour and a half.
Dang, you were left speechless like every 6 minutes. That's nuts.
I was literally, I mean, I started feeling a little bit scared for my safety, I'll be honest, but like, I'm sure it's fine. But like, I started feeling a little bit scared for my own safety, given what I heard. But anyways, you know, it is what it is. And so, yeah, so I got to basically interview what will be a key witness and essentially proffer what her testimony will be at trial. I mean, that was really a proffer. Like I took down verbatim a lot of the things that she said. I put it in quotes. I wish I could read it to you guys. Y'all would lose your minds, but I can't. But anyways, like Twiz said, maybe we'll all get lucky and this trial will be televised and then y'all can all watch it. And then you'll be like, oh my God.
So the state is claiming little bunny attacked the T-Rex.
Yes.
But in reality, T-Rex attacked the bunny and you're defending the bunny.
Yes. That's the simple way of putting it. Yeah, for sure.
We should
like the T-Rex has a long history of things, right? It's exactly the thing that would usually never be admissible, right?
Well, listen, just because I've killed 10 people in my life doesn't mean I can't be a victim. All right. That would be called prejudicial information.
Not in a self-defense case, because like I just read, Rule 404, one of the exceptions is character evidence about the the victim's trait for peacefulness and who's the first aggressor all comes into play. Think about Sarah Boone, for example. Sarah Boone, right? Remember how icky it felt whenever she got to talk about her I forgot his name, Jorge, right? Or George, as she called him. She got to talk about his the DV issues and whatever, and everyone has their own thoughts on how realistic and truthful those were. But nonetheless, she got to present that, right? Again, that's a case that most of you guys will surely know. Just as an example, because in an affirmative self-defense case, character evidence that is negative towards the victim can and will be admissible, especially when it comes to, are they violent? Are they peaceful? Right? For example, if they lied on a test in high school, like no. But like criminal acts, and especially if it has to do with violence or their mental state of mind, shout out to Elaine from Be Heard on that one, that becomes admissible. Dana is still here. Love it. Am I still talking about the ex-wife? Yeah, I think I probably was. I don't know when that comment came in, but yeah, the ex-wife is nice, and the ex-wife is like a survivor, dude. Like, sorry, a survivor female. I didn't mean it like the ex-wife is a really nice dinosaur, and she has survived absolute hell, the likes of which you guys wouldn't believe. She's like literally the type of person who would be like a hero for a lot of people. It is incredible what she's been through and what she's still going through, and what she is risking to help out a stranger, because she does not know the baby bunny. Let me reiterate that. She does not know the baby bunny. She is literally risking her life to come forward to give testimony that could support the defendant in this case, because it's the right thing to do, but she's risking her life literally. She's got everything in place in case something happens to her from the T-Rex in retaliation. So she even went ahead and said, here's what you want. If you want to push his buttons, here's what you should do on cross-examination. I took ample notes on that. She was awesome and very brave and very courageous. And has been to hell and back. And, gaslighting. Well, okay, I don't want to give too many specific details. Again, just imagine the worst potential situation. If you imagine DV with all the psychological and the physical stuff, and then some, and add like more to it than that, and then add to it that the T-Rex Marine dude also went and fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, volunteered to go because they wanted to fight, and like has TBIs and PTSD and never got treatment. And like the list would go on and on and on and on and on and on. All of the things, literally all of the things. Anyway, it's a miracle that she survived, and she's coming forward despite it being really dangerous for her to provide testimony for a stranger baby bunny. And she literally said, if he doesn't get stopped, people will die. It's just a matter of time. That's just a matter of time. And she's actually afraid, first and foremost, for her kids. So she's of the mindset that the T-Rex is the one who should be facing charges and not the baby.
How long until you can tell us this whole story?
Great question. I don't know. I'll have to weigh that out as it goes along and just sort of see. T-Pass thinks the bunny wasn't a fast runner. No, the bunny is partially disabled and partially like paralyzed. Love Tina says she's on the bunny side. Yeah, right.
There's this video on YouTube. I haven't actually watched it, but it's like the civil rights lawyer. And from the clip, it sounds like the cops arrested this dude for like kicking down a door, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's a paraplegic in a wheelchair.
Okay.
And like the dude's sitting there being like, you're joking, right? Because like, how can I kick a door in when I'm in a wheelchair?
Right. Literally, right? That's the situation. A disabled, partially paralyzed baby bunny, like, and then the big bad T-Rex who has been a Marine.
He did it with the deadly weapon. Did he shoot? Can you give us that?
No, he did not shoot.
Golf club? What was the weapon?
There was a gun involved. However, the gun was never shot anybody because the Marine literally was able to get the hold of the gun And then the Marine had a weapon, of which I won't say, and then took that other weapon and murked the baby bunny to smithereens. And the baby bunny has been in the hospital for months. And that's why we're just now finally getting started on this case.
And the baby bunny is the the
T-Rex is the
defendant.
victim. And again, remember, good old boys club. Good old boys club, former
Oh, I got
Marine.
that.
It's really fucked up, dude.
Yeah.
Too fast to saying, was the bunny a true bunny and a herd of little bunnies?
Who called the cops? I think that kind of could matter in this story. Who's the reporting party?
I believe that who called the cops was the baby bunny's girlfriend or wife or whatever. However, interesting of note that the daughter of the person who I interviewed today, right, the T-Rex's ex-wife, that she has with the T-Rex, their daughter, prior to law enforcement arriving, the T-Rex said to the daughter, here, take this and hide it before the police come, and handed her both the weapon used to murk the baby bunny and something else, which I don't know what it is. It's something else. So what could have been a murder weapon, right? Honestly, in my mind, this was attempted murder, like an attempted murder weapon. And
where did the attack happen?
I'm trying to remember. It was, I think they said it was in broad daylight, but it was where no one else was around because it occurred when they were going to try to have like a drop off of the kids. You know, when you've got these contentious custody battles and they go and meet somewhere that's not at the houses and that type of thing. It was like that type of thing. So they were like in a, I don't know. I think they said it was like an outside in broad daylight, but there was no one else around. But there were witnesses because you had the girlfriend or wife of the baby bunny, and then you had the new girlfriend of the T-Rex, who that's a whole other story because she's definitely not in a good situation being with that. And then you had the daughter, who's a witness of the daughter of the T-Rex and the ex-wife who I interviewed today. And anyway, so, and this daughter, of course, like I said, they're very concerned that she might be a victim. Anyway, it's just, whew, yeah. But it was just so cool because I basically got to proffer testimony, you know, like it was so amazing. And like, I don't know, it was one of the coolest things that I've done, to get to just ask whatever questions I wanted to get information that I thought would be relevant, you know, and like, it was amazing. That
would be fun.
T-Rex is not in jail with baby bunny is. Good question. So nobody's actually in jail. However, the baby bunny has been in the hospital for months and just got released from the hospital. So I don't know yet if they're going to try to put the baby bunny in custody now that the baby bunny has not succumbed to the injuries from the T-Rex. Again, wrap your heads around this, right? The T-Rex is not facing charges at this juncture somehow, right? Again, but the good old boys club. Baby bunny was given charges right off the bat and has been literally like on death's door in the hospital, unable to do anything, and just got released. So I don't know what will happen next to the baby bunny.
These cops have to be stupid.
Dana's got it. Dana, round of applause for Dana for keeping up. Of all the times for someone to just show up and be like, here, we just found this live stream. Congrats to you, Dana. Can everyone give Dana a big, huge round of applause, please? Because like, this was a lot. She's the one witness. So there's other witnesses for the bunny. There's other witnesses for the bunny. This is just the one I talked to today, but she's going to be the star witness. But she literally gave me a list like of 20 people that would also be witnesses. She was like, go talk to this person. That list included the T-Rex's family. It included all these other attorneys who were involved in the divorce. It included the guardian ad litem, who's the guardian ad litem for the daughter. It included a neighbor who the T-Rex attempted to kill. Oh yeah, a neighbor. He attempted to kill a neighbor back a few years back. That lady gave, when I just say a list, names, numbers, literally everything, and literally said, all of these people will want to come and talk to you and testify if you call them at trial. That's how much you know what it is? It's like they all have this sense of justice because they have nothing to gain and only things to lose by getting involved because of their safety. But it's like justice needs to be done. And none of them know the baby bunny, like I said, it's giving me goosebumps just thinking about it. It's really something to witness, honestly, that people would risk that much because they're like, this is not just this T-Rex needs to be fucking stopped, basically. And this baby bunny needs to be able to go home and heal from his wounds.
Yeah, I want the whole story. I need it. I need the story.
Does she get witness protection? You know, these are all things that are going to have to be worked out, but you know what? 100% should have it. 100% should have it. Without a doubt, should have it. Anyone that comes to testify at the trial should have it. What's that, Twiz?
Why can't she just have a restraining order?
So she has filed those in the past, but literally the T-Rex would pull all the strings and get them dismissed essentially because of all the connections, again, that blue wall, as they say. But having said that, the restraining order wouldn't have stopped this T-Rex. I'll just tell you that much. He doesn't care.
Well, that was my point. Because it's a piece of paper and it doesn't do shit.
Yeah, I know her badass. She's an absolute badass. She's an absolute badass. But it never hurts to be like, hey, look, we have this person after person after person after person after person, grandparent, child, cousin, attorney. I mean, literally, you name it, like a long
That
list.
doesn't mean he couldn't be a victim. We need the full story.
Okay. What? Oh my God. You know, that's a good question. Mittens is asking about that. I don't know the laws in North Carolina for that. I don't know. But I would imagine that regardless of what the laws are, from what I've gathered today, it sounds like it wouldn't apply to him anyway because of the double standard for being a former Marine. Again, even though hush hush, dishonorably discharged situations. Yeah, I'm with you on that as well, Mary. Oh, Dana says good questions, Twiz. Yay. There you go, Twiz. A compliment from our new squirrel friend.
I still have so many questions.
And Cassidy, yes, certain people seek out branches of the military so they can be violent. And she literally told me.
That's what that fucking lady said in the Zachary Hughes thing. He wanted to join the Marines so he could learn how to stab my sister to death. Shut up.
Here's what I will say. Zachary Hughes had no evidence of ever being violent to anybody ever before. And that's definitely not the case in this situation. Like when you compare the two, it's wild. Like literally, yeah. I wish I could.
But this is how they twist everything. Everything. Look at Bryan. His car door was cleaned so well. He clearly was covering up a murder. Shut the fuck up, Bill.
You're damned if you have blood, you're guilty. And if there's no blood, you're guilty. You know what I mean? Yeah. Oh, the bunny. Yeah. Honestly, the bunny, justice will be done in this case. I will just say, like, literally, and the witness even said up to me on the phone. One of the things she said to me, guys, was she was like, just let God know.
I'm not going to side with you on this yet. I need more evidence. But
I know you're trying to bait me.
If he threw a gun without having a reason to, it was justifiable self-defense. So what caused him to draw the gun is what I need to know.
So the baby bunny is the one that drew the gun only because the T-Rex was like threatening to kill the baby bunny.
So
but the baby bunny did not point the gun at the T-Rex.
Well, then he's an idiot. But anyways, baby bunny's chilling on the grass, munching on a carrot. And T-Rex just comes up and starts threatening to kill him.
Yep. Now, it should be noted.
He drew a firearm and didn't shoot.
He shot off to the side as a
They're both idiots.
But not at the Marine. And what the person who I talked to today literally said, she said, you wouldn't find a single person who could ever fire a shot at the T-Rex, even if they wanted to, and make it, because he would disarm them before they ever had the chance. Even if they were actually able-bodied and had training, which none of those apply to the baby bunny. Baby bunny is disabled baby bunny and has no training, right? But she was like, even if she literally said, I have a quote, I'm not going to say it verbatim, but I have a quote from her.
You need to
that's
call
like,
Turtle Boy yesterday and get him on this case, because this literally sounds pretty much like what happened to Karen Reed by what you're saying right now. I'm not saying I don't believe you.
How? They're completely different. There's no self-defense in Karen Reed.
No, but the cover-up and the good old boy system, the frame job.
Oh, I don't think there's a frame job. I mean, there's no framing. It's just...
It's kind of framing if you're saying somebody did a crime when they didn't do a crime. Was there any witnesses that actually like saw this go down? Like saw a little bunny chilling, eating his carrot?
Yeah. So like I said, you've got baby bunny's new, I don't remember if it's a girlfriend or wife, but you got his girlfriend / wife. And then you've got the T-Rex's new girlfriend.
So this is my question. How did the cops ever get to the, if there are eyewitnesses to little bunny chilling, eating his carrot?
They showed
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Lord.
He's chilling, eating his little carrot, minding his own business. T-Rex is like, I'm going to eat you. And then he pulls out a gun to defend himself from said threat. That's a clear self-defense case. How did the cops ever get from that to little bunny is the bad guy?
They showed up and they listened to who, I'm sure they already knew him, Good Old Boys Club. They listened to the former Marine. They listened to what he said. And literally, apparently this T-Rex former Marine is like a master liar and manipulator and gaslighter to the fullest extent.
They didn't talk to the eyewitnesses of what happened.
Well, they did, but they would have given disputing stories, right? The girlfriend. So first of all, baby bunny would have been, it was like incapacitated, couldn't even give their own story.
That's what I'm saying. Eyewitnesses.
Girlfriend would have said, here's what happened. And then the person who's under the new girl, who's under the control of the T-Rex, would have said whatever he wanted her to say, right? So it's whose word against the other person's word, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand that, but like, they just picked who they believed then.
And in this particular situation, they were going to pick the Marine because the Marine, and because they all know him in the Good Old Boys Club. This Marine's gotten away with all kinds of shit, guys.
Does he know? Like, is this a small town or something?
Yes.
Or like,
I had never even heard of this, and I've been born and raised in North Carolina, and this place is not far away. It's like 30 minutes away. I'd never even heard of this. I didn't even know how to spell the county. I'd have them spell it for me. I'd never heard of it.
This sounds absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
I'm emailing Turtle Boy.
The other thing that the witness that I spoke to today said is like, she was like, look, she was like, this dude, this T-Rex Marine dude, right, is a complete master liar and manipulator. And she literally said, she was like, Scott is going to have to be prepared to like literally fight him, like through cross-examination. Like she's going to have to really be prepared to fight him and not back down. And I was like, dude, trust me. I'm just telling you guys, this cross-examination will be a fucking bloodbath. It'll be, I can't wait. I can't wait. Scott. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Speaking of bloodbaths, I might just punch Bryan right in the face for not letting me watch Ann Taylor just destroy balance on the stand. Go on with the story.
I hear you on that one. Yeah. Kane says, I hear a truck. Yay. Yay. Yay, truck for Kane. Excellent. And then the cops label the bunny as the aggressor. That's exactly right there, Mary. That's exactly right. Yeah, malignant. And then some. Again, I'm trying to be really careful, but yes. And even the witness was careful, but she literally says, she said she actually has all of his psychiatrist records from when he was assessed many, many, many times over, starting in 1990, going back, 35 years from the military. She's got all those records in her bins that she's going to be bringing by next week, guys. I'm insane. Dana says this is really fun. I'm glad you're having fun. Yes, wonderful. I'm glad you're here. We love it. Welcome to the Squirrel Crew, where dreams come true. We're learning to squirrel in, and where Twiz reads. Right, Twiz? Twiz.
I don't read.
He doesn't know how to read. He does not know how to read. That's thing. Yes, tomorrow is the gag order hearing. Correct. Tomorrow is the gag order hearing. I don't know if there's going to be anything noteworthy from that. So like I said, tomorrow night we might be covering this shenanigans with this juror and Karen Reed from the grand jury. We'll just sort of see. But this does complete part 5 of our series discussing the pros and cons of the plea deal and the impact on the criminal justice system. And it's so cute too, right? Because these attorneys that I work for, every morning they come in and they're like, so what'd you do last night? And they know what I did. They know that I streamed and they know exactly what I'm talking about. But they want to know what the topic was for each episode. It's so great. So I was like, yeah, so here's what we talked about last night. And it's like, I don't know, it's just awesome. They're like really intrigued and they're like, wow, yeah, thinking about these different things. And you can see that they're like enjoying it because they're like, some of these things that I discussed with them, they're like, yeah, well, I haven't really thought about this since law school. And they're like, yeah, getting to really think about things from like a more, what's the right word? Like a philosophical level versus like, implementing it on a daily basis level, if that makes sense. However, they're also discussing literally their day in, day out. They're making these exact same decisions that we just discussed. And so it's very interesting. But yeah, this will conclude our series on the pros and cons of the plea deal. But we do have plenty of other stuff. We also got to get caught up on ADL since I have all the stuff ready to go. I wanted to close the loop on this because I think this is very interesting and really worth food for thought, right? And we learned a lot. And there was a lot of surprising statistics. There was a lot of surprising, interesting suggestions and arguments. And for anyone who missed it, again, this is part 5 there were 5 parts. And I also have very detailed timestamps. But we started out with the first article being the coercive plea deal, the scourge of the criminal justice system. Then we had the next article that we went through was leveraging death, which is plea deals dealing with the death penalty specifically. And then this was the third installment or third thing that we covered here, which was this survey that was done of actual criminal defense attorneys and asking them questions about like how they deal with pleas and what role should they have. And also, what happens when they have clients that are innocent? How does being guilty or innocent affect how they advise a client? And much more than that. I'm just trying to kind of summarize, but it was really interesting. And so for anyone who wants to catch up, again, I have really detailed timestamps. And of course, all of the cases that I'm covering and have covered all have playlists. So you can always check out the playlists for this and other cases, and everything will be categorized and timestamped for y'all because I love you guys. Twiz, what is going on where you're at? We had planes. No, we got
planes, trains, and something. I don't know.
Twizomobiles. Dana says she enjoyed it. We'll be back. What cases are you following, Dana? Let us know. And yes, and feel free to pick a custom command. And if you're like, what the fuck's a custom command? It can be whatever you want. So we'll put some examples in the chat here. So anyone in the scroll crew that wants a custom command can have one. And it looks something like this. Here's just some examples for custom commands for people, for our scroll friends that we love so dearly. For sure, Mary, on that one. Yeah. Twin flames. Oh my God, twin flames. That's a whole other thing. Don't worry about that right now, Dana. That's for another day. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. That's why. Can we do Jeff and Shirley on me out? Oh dear. It's really funny because I feel like Kane wasn't really like, I guess Kane was there for like our initial Twin Flames deep dive, right? Right, with the chair thing. But then I didn't really hear Kane talk about them for a long time. And now Kane is like all back on the Jeff and Shalia, whatever you want to say, train of thought, if you will, which I fully support personally. And Bunny, I thought you had one. Do you not have one? Let's see. BK, of course, right. And of course, we'll continue to follow that. But, there will be the thing that will happen eventually when things start becoming unsealed as far as the court docs. Yeah, that's all we will be doing until we go through everything that we need to with that for sure. Anything else that you're following, Dana?
Dana, who's your favorite BK creator on YouTube?
Never apologize for making jokes, Tina. And I must have missed your joke, but I would have supported it had I seen it because I love jokes. I mean, obviously. I mean, are you kidding? Like, we're just goofing around all the time here. For real.
I am the most serious person on earth. If you guys couldn't tell.
So yeah, Bunny does not have, I thought you had one. So anyone that wants a custom command, let me know what you want your response to be. And then I can tell Nightbot to create one for you. We love Nightbot. He has big hands, or little hands, but a big heart, rather. Twiz made one? What was it?
Well, I told her what it should be. Little bunny foo-foo.
Is that what we want? Is that what you want to do, Bunny? There it is. Cute. Oh, you were playing along with the little, I missed it because there was, I was doing the story and what have you. You were trying hard to save Little Bunny. I love that. You know what's so great though, guys? Whenever I do these detailed timestamps that I was just referencing, you know what I love? I love that I get to watch the replay the chat replay. I adore it because you know what? I get to see all the things that I missed. So as I'm doing the timestamps, I also have the chat replay on and I'm like, oh my God, I missed this, I missed that. So I will get to enjoy that. All of your lovely examples to save the bunny. I'll get to see all of that when I'm doing timestamps. So I'll be looking forward to that as well. Welcome on in, Truth Seeker. I think Dana must already have known you, Twiz, from a past life or a previous live stream, it seems like. Y'all know each other.
It's possible. I get around, and currently there's a lot of people talking about me, so,
Well, he better be saying good things or else.
Nope, probably not, but it's hilarious, and I don't care.
Wow. Mary says, chat replay is amazing. I missed last night and watched it today. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Also, Mary, I'm still sorry for your loss. Your fish named Dinosaur. I'm sorry for your loss. And
She got a little mini dinosaur now. Didn't you see that earlier?
I didn't, but I would see it on chat replay when I do the timestamps. I'm reading the things that we're reading, but appreciate you letting me know, Twiz. We love the mini dinosaur. The only dinosaurs that we don't love, well, there's really only one, and it's the T-Rex mentioned earlier. The marine T-Rex. Dino Jr., that's so cute. That is so cute. I love it. Shout out to Dino Jr. and all of the other paw nerds or fin nerds, as it were. So yeah, but that'll be it for this one, my friends. I'm going to take a look. I've got some really interesting notes I wanted to take here for as always, right? Another big day tomorrow. By the way, for any of you guys who heard my story about the federal sentencing memorandum that I contributed to, and that's whole story, that's a big deal, right? That sentencing is on Thursday. So not tomorrow, but the next day. I probably won't be able to think of anything else. I'm going to ask if I can go. I have not asked yet. I'm going to ask tomorrow if I can go. I don't know that that's even possible because high security, it's federal. So I don't know. But I'm going to ask if I can go. But regardless, that's going to be a big day because I'm really invested in the outcome of that. And again, I helped contribute to that sentencing memorandum. So on Thursday, y'all will get an update as to how we did fighting for the best possible outcome for our client in that case. And so that'll be on Thursday, but tomorrow will be another big day. I'm going to be following up with that witness. I've got so many things, guys. It's I'm also sleuthing on another case for a different client. I like this, and this other case that I'm talking about here has a lot of events that happened in South Carolina. So today I made a lot of phone calls to different law enforcement agencies in South Carolina. And I'm like, oh my God, all my worlds are colliding right now. And literally sleuthing down phone records, sleuthing down flock videos, traffic stop videos, security, surveillance, I'm getting to do some real sleuthing, which is awesome. And then while I'm doing that, I'm filing, motions to compel or motions for discovery and all these other different things. And, it's just a squirrely legal dream come true is all I can really say. So anywho's, if Mary was a billionaire, she'd have more than six fish tanks. I thought it said 6 fish initially. 6 fish tanks? That seems like enough to fill up my house. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Kane, yes. Are you referencing your head injury from last night?
And they're saltwater tanks, or at least some of them are.
That's
She's
gnarly.
rolling.
It's gnarly. Who's on what radar? I don't know what you're referencing there, Kane. Are you talking about your head injury still? Or 79 fish? My God. Do you know them all individually by name? Like you can point them all out, all 79?
Wait, so when COVID finished, you just went on like a tank killing spree? What did you do to all the fish?
Oh, that's done. I have not listened to Dinosaur Jr. in way too long. Thank you for reminding me of them, Kane. Appreciate that. It's been probably since college that I've listened to Dinosaur Jr. I need to fix that.
What the hell is Dinosaur Jr.?
Oh my God. Twiz band. It's an awesome band. I'm nothing if not passionate, that's for sure. I think all of you guys that know me here and have been here will all say that. For better or worse, I get really excited and I'm very, very passionate about the law and music. And other things, but those are maybe my two biggest. But also squirrels. He's been singing all night in honor of Mary's new fish, hopefully.
Mary is a fish serial killer.
So Twiz has been on a 90s kick ever since the other night. Or was that last? No, 2 nights ago. We were singing all the 90s. That was so fun.
I told you that my radio station is no rain. Okay. I can't help what songs come up.
Very true. That's a good reason. Yeah. We could do like a whole stream of like, I don't know. 90s music is just a whole thing, and y'all know. I mean, it's just what a time for music. Anyways, rein it in, squirrel. Rein it in. So yes, but guys, I love y'all. Y'all are awesome. Welcome to all the new squirrel friends. Welcome to all the returning squirrel friends. Hugs to everybody. Love y'all. And we'll see what happens tomorrow with Bryan Kohberger. Again, I don't know that's going to be anything too noteworthy. So we'll sort of keep an eye out for like, is that going to be what we want to do tomorrow night, as in the hearing, or like maybe the Karen Reed will take precedent given all the shenanigans with this grand juror person. But love you guys. You're so welcome. And Twiz is still giving Mary a hard time for her fish. Classic. Twiz also, everyone, real quick before we go, everyone wish Twiz the best of luck on his twerk out, because he said he was going to twerk out after the stream. So good luck, Twiz, on your twerk out. Lift those weights. Press those benches. Yeah. Woo. Weightlifting. I don't know any slogans for weightlifting. That's the best I got on that one. There we go. That's it. Twerk out time. Go Twiz. And thank you, Twiz, for being here and for doing Twiz reads, because got to give the squirrels what they want, and the squirrels want Twiz reads. And thank you, Kane, for filling in last night as well. You did awesome as well. So, love you guys. Twiz, any last words?
Expect that 5-paragraph essay on the desk tomorrow night.
I can't even tell what you're. What? Oh my God.
I'm just laughing at myself. Innocent people do plead guilty sometimes.
Yep.
And we should get all the facts before we judge, because Bunny might have done it. Just saying. Bunny might have done it.
Well said. I don't know about that, if I fully agree with that last part, at least in this particular. I mean, you're right. We should get all the facts, and of course, I'm sure Twiz is also trying to bait me into giving more details on that particular case. But you're right. We should always get all the facts before we judge. And you're right about innocent people, as we've covered, and I appreciate that. And yeah, any thoughts on what you expect to happen tomorrow at the hearing for BK, Twiz?
I really just don't care.
Yeah.
Do I think they'll lift the gag? No. Could they? Maybe. Why have it still? Why not?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I would so much prefer that this discussion be about the hearing be about unsealing the documents rather than
The other thing is, right, like the gag could be lifted. That doesn't unseal docs. It doesn't give us
No, it
any
doesn't.
evidence.
It
It just
doesn't. That's
allows
what I'm
people to,
saying.
it just allows people to talk. The state
Exactly.
ain't gonna say shit.
Exactly.
And the defense ain't gonna say shit.
That's why like it's dumb. Like I would so much rather say keep the gag order but unseal the documents, right? Because like that's what we want. That's where all the tea is, the actual tea, the actual factual tea for reals. That's the thing. And I knew Heather would agree. Twin flame.
You want to hear something funny? You want to hear something funny though?
Yes, Twiz.
So I was on the phone with somebody earlier, and they were telling me how Bryan Kohberger doesn't like blondes. And then I looked at Discord, and Meg was like, the book says that Bryan Kohberger went into the Mad Greek and asked Maddie out. And I was like, well, I don't think that happened. But nice try, James Patterson.
Yeah, I mean, that's just all. I mean, it's just may as well be.
Why did they just steal DM's phone records? Probably due to threats. If they were open.
Oh, you're right, Truth Seeker. Thank you. You're right. The hearing. Why did I think it was tomorrow? You're right. Hold on. The hearing is the same day as the plea deal at the federal court. No, thank you for that. You're right. I guess I got so excited. I was ahead of myself. You're right. It's on Thursday. Okay. Well, then that means Karen Reed tomorrow.
People have been saying it tomorrow. It wasn't just you. So that's odd.
Oh, interesting.
But who knows? I don't know. I just don't care. I just looked at it. It said it starts at like 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I don't even want to be awake for that.
Yeah. So everyone, Super Planner Girl just got here. We love you, Amanda. How are you doing? We were just actually finishing up, but like we can't go until we know how you're doing because for anyone who doesn't know, Super Planner Girl's been recovering from a surgery and we love her. So hopefully you're healing up and hopefully you're not in that much pain. Rough day. Oh, hugs to you, Amanda. We're with you. You've got all the Scroll Crew positive vibes coming your way. Your Mittens also says that they thought it was tomorrow. Yeah, interesting. So
SPG. SPG. SPG.
I love that. That's awesome. Actually, Twiz said that the other night on one of the live streams, and it's when you weren't here, Super Planner Girl, but you came up a lot because we were like sending positive thoughts your way. And Twiz did a random SPG like that, and I just like died laughing when I was doing timestamps because, again, it was one of those things that I think I might have missed it live, but I caught it when I was doing the timestamps, and I was like, oh my god, that's hilarious. He did it in a really funny way. It was like unexpected and really emphatic and amazing. Anyways. Is tomorrow this, I think also it depends on what time zones people are in to add to the confusion because it's past midnight here. So technically where I'm at, tomorrow is the 17th. But like, given the fact that like, if we're still thinking it's still the day, the 17th is Thursday. It does get confusing with the time zones though. So SPG is Super Planner Girl, aka Amanda. So SPG stands for Super Planner Girl, but her name is Amanda. Thank you for asking, and so that everyone can know who Super Planner Girl is, if they didn't know what an SPG. Right, Twiz. So, and Twiz already answered that question. I'm late. So, but anyway, y'all, I love y'all. Shout out to everybody for being here. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Get well soon, Amanda, and anyone else who's not doing well at the moment or struggling in any type of way. We send all of our positive scroll vibes out. And also shout out to Dinosaur Jr., Paw Nerd with a fin, and the baby bunny from the story will prevail. And yeah, we'll all be back together tomorrow, aka today, depending on what time zone you're in. And guess it'll be Karen Reed, depending on if, in fact, the hearing happens, because now we're all confused, which is fine. Okay.
Wait, what? There's a hearing?
Oh, Twiz.
About the grand juror?
No, the BK hearing, because now we're all anyways.
You just said you're talking about Karen Reed. What hearing?
I'm saying we'll do the Karen Reed. Twiz, we've only mentioned this 1,000 times tonight about the grand juror from Karen Reed. We already talked about this. Charged, right? But she's doing a plea deal for leaking information about the grand jury. Where were you the other 20 times? Oh my God.
There's a hearing for it or what?
No, the hearings for BK. I'm saying what we will do tomorrow depends on what happens. I think everyone, y'all, Twiz pants. Yes. See you then. Love y'all. Thanks for being a squirrel. But for now,
good night.
Good night and squirrel out.